Chapter 368. How did he solve the second hexagram so quickly? Zhan Bing looked at Mu Yu in disbelief. He remembered that it had taken him a full 7 days to figure out how to solve the second hexagram, and he had almost fainted from hunger. This array was maintained by a steady stream of spiritual energy, and if one looked carefully, they could find some hidden food in the grass. This food was prepared for the younger disciples and had no effect on the array at all. As long as one paid attention, they could even find dew on the grass to quench their thirst. It wasn't just Zhan Bing. Everyone took different amounts of time to decipher the array formation. This mainly depended on one's perception and understanding of the array formation. The shorter the time it took to decipher the array formation, the higher one's perception was. Generally, a Hotian disciple would take at least 7 or 8 days, and even a month or 2. A Zhongtian disciple would take at least 3 or 4 days. As for a Xiantian disciple, it was normal to take a day. But Mu Yu had taken less than 2 hours. Although Mu Yu hadn't learned any profound array formations, but when faced with many things, it was easy for him to calm down and think about how to break the array formations. This was related to the falling dust cultivation method that he cultivated. The falling dust cultivation method allowed him to eliminate the distracting thoughts in his mind. Moreover, Deadwood Daddy had told him that there was no perfect array in the world. There were bound to be some flaws, and as long as he could calculate the general situation of the array, he would be able to solve it. So when he faced the second hexagram, he didn't wander around like a headless fly like the others. Instead, he carefully thought about it, just like when he had solved the mirror array set up by Deadwood. I remember that the record holder for the second hexagram was senior apprentice brother Mu Chunghong. He only took 4 hours to solve it, but this guy didn't even take 2 hours? Fan Wen sucked in a breath of cold air. Mu Chunghong was the publicly recognized number 1 genius of the array faction, and was also the only Xiantian disciple of the array faction. 10 years ago, when he had just entered the sect, he had broken into the 7th hexagram. Unfortunately, he had failed at the 8th hexagram and had almost lost his life. It was a Xiantian array master who had saved him, but this had caused a huge sensation in the array faction. But the person in front of them seemed to have broken the record of the number 1 genius? Don't be hasty. Senior Brother Mu is someone who passed through 7 trigrams. This newcomer is just lucky. How can he compare to Senior Brother Mu? Who knows, he might just end up dead, Zhan Bing said. The method to solve the first and second divinations seemed to be the same. Many people thought that if the disciples of the array faction were to give them some pointers, it would not be a problem to pass. However, the array door had already ensured that this kind of cheating was impossible. Even if the disciples of the array faction told the person who wanted to enter the 8 trigrams that the second trigram was to look for something different and that it was right under their feet, this person would be forced to forget this method when passing through the array door, leaving him to figure it out on his own. In order to break through the formation, one had to rely on one's true strength and not fake it. Therefore, Zhan Bing and Fan Wen did not think that Mu Yu cheated. Instead, they thought that Mu Yu was lucky. Mu Yu stood where he was without moving. The grassland above his head shattered like a mirror, but when it smashed onto his body, it turned into even finer fragments of runes and disappeared. It did not cause him any harm. The surrounding scenery spun and changed again. All the grasslands disappeared and Mu Yu's body suddenly floated up as though he had lost all gravity. What's going on? Mu Yu frowned and wanted to speak, but he found that no sound came out. The air suddenly fell into a dead silence. No sound could be heard, and no smell could be smelled. Xiao Shuai firmly grabbed onto his clothes and was climbing into his pocket. His mouth opened and closed as though he was cursing loudly. Mu Yu knew the shape of Xiao Shuai's mouth like the back of his hand. He knew that Xiao Shuai was complaining, "Why am I floating? Do I have to go up into the sky again?" This was also Mu Yu's question. His body was not restrained in any way. It was as though he was swimming in water, but he could not find a place to borrow strength. He could not swim at all, and could only float aimlessly. The spirit power in his body seemed to be suppressed by something, making him unable to control himself at all. He was surrounded by a white fog. He floated in the fog and could no longer distinguish where the sky was and where the earth was. The fog gradually dissipated and darkness descended. However, there were dots of light in the darkness. They were densely packed and more appeared. They seemed to be orderly but were also chaotically distributed around Mu Yu's body. These dots of light looked like a sky full of stars. They were only the size of rice grains. Some of the stars were brighter, while others were dimmer. Mu Yu stretched out his hand and found that these stars were within his reach. He could move them, but after a while, these stars would automatically return to their positions. What was the third hexagram for? Mu Yu looked at these stars carefully. The arrangement of each star looked familiar. Then he suddenly understood what these stars meant. Every night when he looked up at the sky, the stars in the sky were arranged like this. He looked around and finally saw the most familiar Big Dipper star formation, not far away. He struggled to move towards the Big Dipper star formation. This was not easy because he could only move a little at a time. When he moved to the Big Dipper star formation, it felt like several hours had passed. But so what if he found the Big Dipper star formation? There was still no hint as to how to pass this hexagram. These constellations were scattered all around and there was nothing special about them. The rice-sized dots of starlight were constantly shining, but they did not attack Mu Yu. He had never come into contact with constellation formations before, but Ku Mu had mentioned it to him before. Studying constellation formations was a huge field of knowledge. Different constellation formations had different abilities. Most of these constellation formations were used in battles. When the self-cultivators fought with the Yumeng devils, it was impossible for them to fight in a chaotic manner. Many almighty experts of the human race had studied the constellations in the sky and determined the positions of the self-cultivators according to the constellations in the sky. By turning the constellation formation in the sky into an offensive and defensive formation, it would produce unexpected results on the battlefield. Could this third hexagram be used to break the constellation formation? Just as he thought of this, the constellations around him suddenly changed. All the constellations changed their positions and began to rearrange themselves. Soon, all the stars were divided into two groups. One group was scattered around Mu Yu in a chaotic mess, while the other group gathered in front of him to form a mysterious constellation formation. This constellation formation looked like a long snake. The snake's head was triangular, and its body was constantly twisting and changing. It was very flexible. Mu Yu roughly estimated that there were at least hundreds of thousands of rice-sized stars forming this long snake. It was about 10 feet long, and in front of Mu Yu, it was like a huge monster. Do I have to use these stars around me to form something to fight against this long snake? Mu Yu thought to himself. But this was too exaggerated. There were tens of thousands of stars around him. Not to mention that it was very difficult for him to move. If he were to arrange them one by one, he might not be able to form something as big as the long snake, even if he were to arrange them one by one for 100 years. However, the long snake suddenly spat out its tongue and then fiercely swung its tail at Mu Yu. Mu Yu wanted to escape, but his body did not listen to him and was directly swept away. He felt like his chest had been hit by a stick. It was extremely uncomfortable. This long snake formed by the constellations was actually for real. As the long snake spat out its tongue, it suddenly attacked Mu Yu again. This time, it actually opened its bloody mouth and bit at Mu Yu. This fellow's mouth was enough to bite off Mu Yu's head. Mu Yu struggled to twist away, and the snake's teeth bit his arm. A piercing pain assaulted him, and blood flowed out. This long snake formed by the stars was actually similar to a real long snake. Fortunately, the long snake did not seem to be poisonous. Otherwise, Mu Yu would definitely have started cursing. If these stars could be controlled by me, I would definitely make a stick. See if I can't beat you to death. Mu Yu was also angry. His body was now restricted. Fighting against the long snake was completely one-sided, and he was the one being tortured. However, just as this thought formed, the stars around him actually formed a stick about the size of the long snake according to his will. He ruthlessly swung it at the long snake. So I can do it just by thinking about it? Mu Yu was somewhat surprised. If he had known that these stars could be controlled by his will, he wouldn't have let the long snake mess with him for nothing. The long stick missed the long snake. The long snake nimbly dodged, and at the same time, it quickly flicked its tail and sent the long stick flying. Snake hit 7 inches, let me teach you a lesson. Mu Yu's mind stirred, and the long stick in the air transformed into a triangular fork, stabbing at the snake's 7 inches. However, the long snake's body suddenly curled up rapidly, wrapping around the triangular fork, and viciously biting down. Holy shit! Mu Yu felt his chest tremble as 4 clear teeth marks appeared on his body. If the long stick was bitten, it would be equivalent to him being bitten. Under Mu Yu's control, the long stick turned into a pile of loose sand. It struggled free from the long snake's entanglement and quickly transformed into an eagle. The eagle flapped its wings and bared its sharp teeth to grab the long snake. However, the long snake was not to be outdone. It actually transformed into a large net, wanting to trap the eagle. Mu Yu hurriedly transformed the eagle into a gigantic sword and slashed down at the large net. The large net was split into 2 by Mu Yu's gigantic sword, but it quickly reassembled and transformed into a gigantic sword to confront Mu Yu. This won't do. All things reinforce and restrain each other. No matter what I transform my stars into, they will transform into something even more powerful to restrain me. If this continues, there will be no end to it. There must be some loophole that I've overlooked. Mu Yu carefully sized up the large sword in front of him, hoping to find something abnormal about it. The surrounding rice-sized stars were his weapons. He only needed to use his mind to transform these stars into anything. If he wanted to break the constellation array, he needed to use the stars he controlled to defeat his opponent. However, his opponent was also formed from stars, so it could always transform into something stronger to neutralize his attacks. Soon, he discovered that there was a gigantic star emitting red light at the hilt of his opponent's sword. This star was extremely dazzling and could be easily seen. Mu Yu remembered that the long snake was located at the 7-inch point of the snake's body, and when it transformed into a large net, this red star was located at one of the corners of the net. At this moment, the 2 swords in the air had already intertwined as they slashed with all their might. Whenever Mu Yu's sword hilt was struck by his opponent, he would grimace in pain. He wanted to use his sword to stab at his opponent's red star, but it would always be neutralized by his opponent. Competing with me in swords? You're simply displaying your slight skill in front of an expert. Mu Yu cursed inwardly. Following that, he realized that these words were a little strange. What did it mean to compete in wretchedness? It was too unpleasant to hear. Mu Yu's gigantic sword suddenly dispersed, transforming into 6 flying swords. Although they were smaller in size, they were even more nimble. Heavenly Sword 9 Guides was Mu Yu's specialty. His 6 swords were like dragons swimming in water in the air, using all kinds of tricky methods to sweep towards the gigantic sword. The gigantic sword began to appear flustered. It realized that it was unable to deal with so many flying swords at the same time, so it dispersed and transformed into a gigantic sphere. The sphere was inlaid layer by layer, wrapping the red star in the center. The entire sphere rapidly rolled, resisting the attacks of Mu Yu's flying swords with all its might. Mu Yu's flying swords stabbed at the rolling sphere, but the sphere actually neutralized the power of his swords by quite a bit. The 6 swords stabbed at the same time, but they were all bounced off without any mishaps. At this level, even if he could make his flying swords use Heavenly Sword 9 guides, it was not something that Mu Yu could use himself, so it was still very awkward to use. Chapter 369. The 2 flying swords suddenly separated and transformed into sharp flying claws. There was a chain behind the flying claws. The sharp flying claws directly grabbed the sphere and pierced into it. Then, one end of the chain began to transform into a rod. It swung with force, throwing the sphere into the air like a meteor hammer. The sphere's rotation was interrupted and the other 4 flying swords turned back into a sharp awl. Then, under Mu Yu's control, the claw swung the sphere towards the awl. The awl pierced into the sphere and the sphere caved in like a deflated balloon. The sphere turned into a shield and blocked the awl's advance. "It's my turn now." Mu Yu's eyes flashed and the awl under his control began to spin, creating a powerful penetrating force that shattered the shield. Specks of starlight scattered in all directions, and Mu Yu immediately saw a conspicuous red star among the specks of starlight. The claw turned into darts and flew towards the red star. Many stars rushed in front of the red star to protect it, but they were all repelled by Mu Yu's darts. Mu Yu took advantage of an opening and finally let a dart pierce the red star. The red star wanted to escape, but the dart turned into a palm and held the red star firmly in its hand. After the red star was restrained, all the stars controlled by the red star seemed to have lost their backbone and began to run around like headless flies. Mu Yu's palm squeezed hard and the red star was crushed. Then, cracks began to appear in the dark starry sky, and it turned into thousands of fragments that fell down. Mu Yu felt his body sink and suddenly gravity returned. When he was weightless, he didn't know if he was standing or upside down, but once gravity returned, he knew his standing position. He was lying face down and didn't have time to adapt to the new gravity before he fell to the ground. "Bastard, can't you be gentler?" Mu Yu was so angry that his nose was almost crooked from the fall. While he was cursing, the disciples guarding the array widened their eyes. They didn't expect this inconspicuous guy to pass the 3rd hexagram so quickly. "How long did you take to pass the 3rd hexagram?" Zhan Bing swallowed his saliva. In this trial, the stars controlled by the 8 trigrams didn't attack continuously. After attacking for 3 hours, it would stop, leaving 3 hours for the challenger to figure out how to deal with it. When the challenger was surrounded by the stars controlled by the array and lost consciousness, it was considered a failure. It was a pity that Mu Yu was not on the same level as the ordinary new disciples. Although he was only 19 years old, but he had experienced far more than the new disciples. Even in the 2nd heavenly layer, which was filled with monster beasts everywhere, he was still restrained by this constellation array. That was just too unreasonable. "I took a month. At that time, all the stars I controlled were surrounded and I almost suffocated to death. What about you?" Fan Wen was also very surprised. "Me too, he actually took less than 3 hours. Zhan Bing's Zhan Bing, Zhan Bing, Zhan Bing's, Zhan Bing." The talents of the Zhongtian disciples were much better than the Houtian disciples. They were also the focus of the sect's training. The elders would pay more attention to the Zhongtian and Xiantian disciples. The Houtian disciples could only be regarded as shrimp soldiers and crab generals. Fan Wen's face was very ugly because he also thought so. At first, he looked down on Mu Yu and even ridiculed him. But in the end, his method of breaking the array was so fast. But he didn't break the record of the 3rd hexagram. Unfortunately, senior brother Mu was half an hour faster than him. Fan Wen pretended to be calm. But in fact, he knew that even if Mu Yu's speed was faster than Mu Yu's, Fan Wen's speed was much faster than Fan Wen's. Mu Yu got up and looked around again. At this moment, he had come to a room with only 3 doors. These 3 doors were the life door, death door, and stop door that he had chosen at the beginning. What does the 4th hexagram have to do? Mu Yu looked at the 3 doors and frowned. He had already broken through the 3rd hexagram and had the qualifications to become a Hotian disciple. The Array faction should accept him as a disciple. But this time, his purpose was to find the Array faction's Tao. If he only entered the Array faction as a Hotian disciple, it would be difficult to attract enough attention. It would not be easy to meet the Array faction's Tao. At the same time, he also understood that he could not be too conspicuous. If the Array faction had a talented disciple, he would be known by all the major sects in the cultivation world. At that time, Mu Yu's identity would be easily exposed. In order to hide his identity, he had specially changed his face before coming here. Even so, he could not be too eye-catching. You have broken through the 3rd hexagram and have the qualifications to become a Hotian disciple. The first 3 doors are the doors you chose for the first stage. If you choose to give up on the 4th hexagram, you can open any door and leave here. If you choose to continue, you will need to open 2 of the doors as your path. The ancient voice rang in Mu Yu's ears again, reminding him of what to do next. If he chose to continue, he would need to open 2 doors. If he chose to give up, he only needed to open 1 door and leave. Mu Yu's gaze swept across the 3 doors. He did not know why, but he saw the life and death doors again. Life and death seemed to follow him like a shadow. His purpose in coming to the Array faction this time was to release his life and death in the blink of an eye ability to save Kumu. Since that was the case, what was there to hesitate about? He walked over and pushed open the life and death doors without hesitation. He chose the death door and the life door? Is he crazy? Fan Wen's expression changed slightly. Then he remembered that he had just offended Mu Yu. He was worried that Mu Yu would remember him, but now it seemed that he did not need to worry at all. He sneered, "Let him die with understanding." But this choice means. Zhan Bing revealed a strange expression. The 2 of them looked at each other. Obviously, they knew what choosing the life and death doors at the same time would bring. For thousands of years, many disciples have tried to choose the death door and life door method. However, none of them have succeeded. He will not be an exception. Zhan Bing could not wait for Mu Yu to die in the next hexagram. Otherwise, if Mu Yu broke through this hexagram and became a Zhongtian disciple, then with his status as a Hotian disciple, Mu Yu would hold a grudge against him. Outsiders did not know what the death door and life door meant, but there was no disciple of the Array faction who did not know. To solve the 8 trigrams, each hexagram was harder than the last. At the 8th hexagram, the difficulty reached a terrifying level. It was basically certain death. So far, only 1 person in the Array faction had passed the 8th hexagram. That was the Array faction's famous founder, Array Tiandao. Death door and life door meant that the order of the 8 trigrams would be disrupted. The 4th hexagram would be replaced by the death door hexagram. In other words, Mu Yu breaking through the 4th hexagram was breaking through the 8th hexagram. When breaking through the hexagram, the first hexagram would let people choose one of the ominous doors. They were the death door, wonder door, and pain door. Generally, no one was willing to choose the death door because it was too risky. So when choosing the ominous door, almost everyone avoided the death door and chose the wonder door or pain door. But Mu Yu directly chose the death door and the life door at the same time. When the life door and death door appeared at the same time, the order of the 8 trigrams would be disrupted and the 8th hexagram would be brought forward. The 8th hexagram is too difficult. Do we need to remind him? Zhan Bing asked tentatively. Fan Wen snorted, "It's too late. I'm afraid he's dead for sure. Although we don't know what the 8th hexagram is, he definitely won't pass it. We don't even have a chance to attack him." Zhan Bing and Fan Wen didn't think Mu Yu could break through the 8th hexagram. So far, other than Array Tiandao, no one in the Array faction had done this. Mu Yu was originally going to break through the 4th hexagram, but his fourth hexagram was changed to the eighth hexagram. After the life door and death door were opened, the stop door disappeared and the life door automatically closed, leaving only the death door open. An eerie ghostly aura enveloped the entire gate of death. Waves of heart-palpitating fluctuations came from the gate of death. It was as if someone was whispering, but also as if someone was laughing sinisterly. Muyu was already used to this kind of aura. He had been dealing with things like ghost aura for a long time. His right hand flashed with a black light. Now, the spirit energy in his body was completely different. His body was mixed with a trace of death energy. He didn't know that choosing the life door and death door would change the order of the 8 trigrams. He also didn't know that he was about to face the legendary 8th hexagram. Even if he knew, he wouldn't retreat. He had to move forward. The moment he entered the death door, the entire formation door shook. An ancient energy seemed to come from the vast starry sky and rippled outwards. This energy passed through the entire Array faction's mountain gate, passed through the vast mountains, and passed through countless Array faction disciples without alarming anyone. This ancient aura rushed straight into the forbidden area of the Array faction. This forbidden ground was the core of the Array faction. The Array faction disciples didn't dare to casually step in. However, they all knew that once someone entered this forbidden ground, their understanding of the Array Dao would increase by leaps and bounds. This forbidden ground was a forest. It was still summer outside, but here it was as if autumn had arrived. Leaves fluttered in the air and fluttered down on a person's body, covering his entire body. When the energy of the formation door swept into the forbidden ground, this person suddenly opened his eyes. His gaze was like lightning. The moment he opened his eyes, it was as if multicolored light shot out in all directions, illuminating the entire land. This caused the surrounding spirit energy to violently swirl. The leaves covering his body were instantly crushed into powder. Someone entered the 8th hexagram? A surprised voice came out from this person's mouth. This person was a middle-aged man without a white beard. His entire aura was restrained, like a mountain that people admired. Gu Bo's calm face revealed an unconcealable surprise. If someone saw his face now, they would definitely be shocked. In their impression, this kind of surprised expression had never appeared on this person. His gaze was like a vast sea of stars. It passed through the entire sect, passed through the vast mountains, and finally landed on Muyu, who was in the 8th hexagram. Not a Xiantian disciple, but a man who fought to live after death? The middle-aged man frowned. Then, his eyes revealed an extremely disappointed expression. He casually glanced at Muyu and lightly snorted. There are always people who overestimate themselves. Sigh. I was happy for nothing. For thousands of years, only Array Heavenly Dao had passed the 8th hexagram. Among the younger generation of the Array faction, the most talented person could only pass the 7th hexagram. Although it was already very difficult to pass the 7th hexagram, the middle-aged man had been searching for someone who could pass the 8th hexagram. There was no other reason. In his opinion, only those who passed the 8th hexagram had the right to receive his inheritance. Chapter 370. The warm sunlight shone on the ground, making Muyu feel very comfortable. He was a little puzzled. Did he come to the wrong place? When he entered the gate of death, it was eerie. But after stepping into the gate of death, everything suddenly changed. There were no clouds for thousands of miles, and the sun was shining brightly. It was completely different from what he had imagined. He stood under a verdant Bodhi tree. The Bodhi tree's green shade protected him, as if it had endless vitality. It swayed happily in the wind. Looking into the distance, there was a stretch of towering mountains and precipitous ridges, and his position was on a hillside. Muyu stroked the Bodhi tree. The Bodhi tree was real and not illusory. However, he understood that in the 8 trigrams, it was very difficult to distinguish between the real and the fake. Many array formations would confuse a person's senses. One could not rely on touch alone to distinguish between reality and illusion. The Bodhi tree was not unfamiliar to him. Back when he was in Mu Yuming's territory, the old tree chief had brought him to see Mu Yuming's guardian, which was the old Bodhi tree that had lived for an unknown number of years. Do I need to find clues for this hexagram? Mu Yu circled the Bodhi tree and did not find anything unusual. He did not want to merge with the Bodhi tree because he could not be sure if someone was secretly observing him. There were indeed people secretly observing him, but after he entered the 8th hexagram, the 2 disciples on duty were unable to detect his movements. No matter who it was, they could not see what was hidden in the 8th hexagram. He looked at the morning sun, which was slowly rising from the east. This was a phenomenon that should not exist, because according to his calculations, the real time should be at night. The sunlight shone on the Bodhi tree, making the Bodhi tree even more vibrant. Mu Yu walked out of the Bodhi tree's shadow and bathed in the sunlight. Countless ripples suddenly appeared in the air, as if someone had thrown a stone into a calm lake. The surrounding scene suddenly became incomparably gloomy, and thousands of ghost fogs swept towards him. Despair, fear, bloodlust, all sorts of negative emotions surged into his heart. Such a familiar scene made it seem as if Mu Yu had once again entered the deathly aura of the underworld grass. Mu Yu had never been able to overcome this feeling in the deathly aura of the underworld grass. He was almost lost in the layers of terrifying phenomena. If it wasn't for the dead tree pressing on his life acupoint and forcefully pulling him back from the world of deathly aura, he wouldn't have been able to get out at all. Mu Yu's body trembled. He saw Deadwood lying at his feet, covered in blood. His face was filled with pain as he struggled, wanting Mu Yu to save him. Save me? Why didn't you use your endless life force to save me? Why don't you go and kill Tian Bui? Why don't you go and kill Shi Dengtian? Why do you have to tolerate it? Gu Mu asked with great difficulty. I don't have the ability to kill them, I'm sorry. Mu Yu turned around in a panic. He saw the Bodhi tree behind him, and he retreated towards it. All the illusions disappeared. The sun was still shining brightly, and the mountains in the distance were still lush green. The sun slowly climbed up the branches and rose higher. The shadow of the Bodhi tree was also shrinking. Mu Yu collapsed under the Bodhi tree. He was extremely sad. He was afraid to see Deadwood struggling in front of him while he couldn't do anything about it. He was so weak. He couldn't even defeat Tian Bui at Stargate. How could he face the colossal Sanchong Palace? The Bodhi tree was like the last bright harbor in his heart. It could protect him from being invaded by the deathly aura. The cool shade of the tree gave Mu Yu a bit of comfort, allowing his heart to slowly calm down. Little mouse, what did you see? Dragon Ting whispered. Little Shuai's face was bitter. The chicken legs I ate are full of maggot. I'm starving to death. I saw myself being refined into an elixir of immortality. Dragon Ting was very unhappy. Little Shuai and Dragon Ting were also affected by the 8th hexagram. They saw what they were most afraid of. Mu Yu knew what he had to do in this hexagram. He had to face the fear in his heart. If he couldn't overcome it, he could only be trapped under the Bodhi tree. I have to face all of this eventually, right? Mu Yu clenched his fists and stepped into the sunlight again. The air rippled again, and endless darkness attacked. Tian Bui stood in front of Mu Yu and smiled gently. His smile was so bright that it was impossible to dislike it. However, in Mu Yu's eyes, it was like the smile of a demon. He's very important to you, isn't he? Tian Bui's foot stepped on Deadwood's chest. Deadwood was already on the verge of death. His entire body was covered in blood. He struggled to open his eyes and weakly spat out 2 words to Mu Yu. Save me. Mu Yu's entire body trembled. He knew this was an illusion. He told himself to calm down. His gaze passed Tian Bui. There was a door not far behind him. Was that the exit? Mu Yu didn't look at Deadwood. He gritted his teeth and ran toward the exit. Are you really not going to save him? The sword in Tian Bue's hand was emitting cold, killing intent, but his smile was still so warm. Mu Yu couldn't help but look at Deadwood. Tian Bue's sword was already stabbing toward Deadwood's throat. No! Mu Yu roared angrily. He closed his eyes, but he still saw the scene of Deadwood's throat spurting blood. This wasn't something he could resolve with his eyes closed. He knew this was fake, but he still couldn't accept it. He wanted to kill Tian Bue to avenge Deadwood, but he couldn't do it. He had already arrived in front of the door. He knew that as long as he passed through the door, all the illusions would disappear and he would pass this hexagram. His hatred for Tian Bue had reached the point where it was engraved in his heart. His eyes were red, but he couldn't stay. He struggled to open the door and rushed in. He looked at everything in front of him in a daze. The Bodhi tree was still swaying with vitality. The sun shone warmly on the ground. It had risen higher than before, and the Bodhi tree's shadow was getting smaller and smaller. He had returned to his original place. The door didn't take him through the 8th hexagram, but it took him back to the Bodhi tree. Why was it like this? Mu Yu was in a terrible mood. Anger shrouded his heart. His mind was filled with the scene of Deadwood begging him for help. But under the anger was a deep sense of powerlessness. He was so weak that anyone could easily crush him. Tian Bue, I will definitely kill you. Mu Yu's voice completely changed. It was no longer full of vitality, but low and hoarse. It was like a resentful spirit from the 9 hells, difficult to endure. The Bodhi tree swayed gently behind him. A few leaves fell lightly on Mu Yu's shoulder. The sun in the sky rose higher, and the shadow under the Bodhi tree continued to shrink. He gathered his courage and stepped into the sunlight for the 3rd time. Ripples spread and darkness descended. Heaven Does Not Wait's gentle smile was so real in front of Mu Yu's eyes that Mu Yu wanted nothing more than to tear that disgusting smile of his into pieces. You are afraid of me. You are right to be afraid of me because you also know that you can never defeat me. Tian Bue's words were so intimate, as if he was explaining a simple principle to his little brother. But Mu Yu's shadow clone sword was already out of its sheath. The sword shadows mixed with killing intent slashed at Tian Bue. Heaven Is Not Waiting grabbed Deadwood's collar and placed him in front of himself. Can you bear to do this? Tian Bue's voice was very polite. The shadow clone sword stopped an inch away from Deadwood's forehead. A strand of Deadwood's hair was cut off by the sword chi and floated in the air. Mu Yu's face twisted. He couldn't do it. He couldn't do it to his father. Save me. Deadwood opened his eyes and said weakly. Mu Yu's veins bulged. He wanted to kill Tian Bue, but Deadwood was being held hostage by Tian Bue. Even though he knew it was all fake, he still didn't want to do it. You don't dare to fight me fair and square? Mu Yu said in a trembling voice. Tian Bue laughed as if he had heard a very funny joke. He threw Deadwood away and his body suddenly disappeared. Then, Tian Bue's voice sounded in Mu Yu's right ear. If I fight you, can you beat me? Mu Yu turned his head and met Tian Bue's gentle smile. His killing intent was awe-inspiring. The shadow clone sword had already swept out. But Tian Bue only stretched out 2 fingers and caught Mu Yu's sword without any fancy move. Mu Yu wanted to pull back his sword, but the sword was firmly clamped and couldn't move at all. You are so weak. How can you fight me? Tian Bue lightly slapped out with his palm and imprinted it on Mu Yu's chest. It was like a mountain had crashed into Mu Yu. Mu Yu was sent flying. His organs had been displaced and his ribs were completely broken. Blood sprayed out of his mouth as he fell to the ground in a sorry state. He didn't even have the strength to get up. The damage that Tian Bue had done to him was actually real. Beg me for mercy and I won't kill you. Tian Bue squatted in front of Mu Yu with a smile. He stretched out a finger and lifted Mu Yu's chin. Mu Yu panted heavily. endless death aura surged out of his body and wrapped around his injured meridians, repairing his injuries. He clenched his teeth, but that palm had seriously injured him. He didn't have any strength to resist. Tian Bue didn't care. He stood up and grabbed Mu Yu by the collar. Your shelter hasn't disappeared yet. I can't kill you. I want you to see how strong I am and how unstoppable I am. I want you to slowly die in despair and powerlessness. You are just a weak person. Obediently stay under your Bodhi tree. Be a coward and don't come out again. Tian Bue sent out another palm. Mu Yu was like a kite with a broken string. He fell heavily into the shadow of the Bodhi tree. The surroundings became sunny again. The sun had already risen to the sky. The Bodhi tree's shadow shrunk to a point where only Mu Yu could fit. Mu Yu was seriously injured. The pain washed away his anger and blurred his consciousness. I will definitely kill you. Mu Yu spat out these words before he fainted. He was seriously injured. At the same time, he understood what this hexagram was about. This hexagram was a test of life and death. If you couldn't withstand it, then only death awaited you, unless someone came to save you. But Mu Yu had only chosen a way to challenge the hexagram. He didn't amazingly challenge the 8th hexagram. He wasn't like those lesser innate disciples who relied on their real strength to challenge the 8th hexagram. Lesser innate disciples would be valued by the higher-ups of the Array sect, but he wasn't. Over the years, there had been many disciples in the Array sect who chose to challenge the hexagram after challenging the 3rd hexagram. Without exception, they all died in the hands of their own fear. The higher-ups of the Array sect wouldn't constantly pay attention to what was happening in the Array sect. They would only appear when someone had challenged the 6th hexagram. Challenging the 7th hexagram and challenging the 6th hexagram were two completely different concepts. No one would save him. Chapter 371. This is a real injury. Little Shuai frantically checked on Mu Yu's condition. It used all of its spirit energy to help Mu Yu heal. Mu Ling had already rushed out and slowly landed on Mu Yu's chest. Its body was now shining with green and black light. The death aura of the underworld grass had invaded its body, causing it to become a bit strange. The death aura on its body continuously flowed into Mu Yu's body. The black spirit energy in Mu Yu's body seemed to be summoned and responded to Mu Ling's death aura. The black spirit energy began to quickly move through every part of Mu Yu's body. The wounds were attacked by the black spirit energy, and all of the necrotic tissues were swallowed by the black spirit energy. A heart-wrenching pain attacked Mu Yu and woke him up. The black spirit energy did not help him heal his wounds, but it was swallowing his body. But at this moment, the white spirit energy in his body also began to move. When the black spirit energy cleared away the necrotic tissues, the white spirit energy had already covered the wounds, causing the wounds to regenerate. The healed parts seemed to be stronger and the ribs in his chest were even harder than the rest of his body. This process caused Mu Yu to be in so much pain that he wanted to die. He wanted to scream out loud, but he forcefully held it in. This was because he discovered that the black and white spirit energy in his body were strange. One was swallowing while the other was regenerating. The regenerated parts clearly made his body more resilient. Mu Yu, your body seems to have undergone a strange change. I'm not very sure what's going on. You have to hold on. Little Shuai touched the back of its head and was puzzled. Little Shuai was very knowledgeable about many things, but whether it was the changes in Mu Ling's sword or the black and white spirit energy in Mu Yu's body, they were all far beyond its understanding. This was because their appearance was unprecedented and Little Shuai's strange memories did not record these things. Mu Yu opened his eyes and looked at the sun. The sun was gradually setting in the west and the shadow of the Bodhi tree was beginning to elongate. The position where Mu Yu was lying was also gradually being illuminated by the sun. Ripples appeared in the surroundings again, and Mu Yu once again entered the world of darkness. Tian Buwait was still looking at Muyu, as if he had expected Muyu to appear again. Muyu got up and slowly walked towards Tian Bu. Deadwood's hands were tied up, and the sky was not waiting for him. He was suspended in the air and slowly rotated, causing Muyu's anger to soar again. When the sun sets, your shelter will no longer be able to protect your life. Heaven does not wait, said gently. I won't let you defeat me. In my eyes, you will definitely be a dead man. Muyu's face was filled with determination. His hatred was spreading in his heart. But when he saw Deadwood Daddy, he felt another wave of fear. He knew he couldn't beat Heaven is waiting. He was afraid that Deadwood Daddy would blame him for not doing his best to save them. The thing he was most afraid of was being completely displayed in front of him by this formation, and he might even be killed by it. He was afraid that if he died here, then he would never be able to avenge Deadwood Daddy. And Tian Buwait would continue to be arrogant forever. Tian Buwait slapped out again, hitting Muyu's chest. But to Muyu's surprise, his ribs didn't show any signs of being broken. It seemed that the black and white spirit energies devouring and rebirth had made his bones even harder. The black and white spirit energies devouring and rebirth were transforming his body. Even if you crush all the bones in my body, I will still kill you. Muyu clenched her teeth and said. Tian Buwait's eyes flashed with killing intent. His body flickered, and he was already in front of Muyu. Do you know what the most painful thing in life is? Tian Buwait grabbed Muyu's hands and clenched. Muyu let out a muffled groan. The bones in his hands had been crushed by Tian Buwait. The most painful thing in life is that you have broken into the 8th trigram of the 8 trigrams formation. The 8th hexagram shows what you are most afraid of. Because you are here, you will never be able to overcome your fear. You can only watch as your enemy ravages you. Heaven Bue exerted more force, and Muyu's arms were also shattered. Terrible pain came, but Muyu had broken his arms more than once or twice. In the past, whenever he used the Nameless Swordsman's sword intent, his arms would break because he couldn't bear the huge power, so he could endure it. This is the 8th trigram? Muyu's eyes widened. He didn't know that he had chosen to fight to the death. He had always thought that this was only the 4th trigram. Yes, this is the 8th trigram. The 8th trigram will give you shelter. As long as the sun doesn't set, you won't die. Even if you are beaten to a pulp, you will still be hanging on to your last breath. But after the sun sets, you have no chance of survival. You can only watch as your fear erodes you step by step, and you are killed by a powerful enemy. You can't do anything but die unwillingly. Tian Buwait was full of smiles. If he died in the 8th trigram, then it would be true death. He slapped out again, and a powerful palm energy completely covered Muyu's body. Overbearing spirit energy poured into Muyu's meridians. As you wish, I will destroy all your meridians and make you beg for death. Boom. Muyu's meridians seemed to explode. All his meridians were broken, and all his bones were shattered. His skin split open and blood flew everywhere. The heart-wrenching pain spread throughout Muyu's body. This pain was so clear that it made him want to die. But this time, he didn't lose his consciousness. All the pain was clearly reflected in his memory, and it was shocking to the eye. Go back to your shelter and wait for death. When the sun sets in your shelter, we will meet again. That will be the last time we see each other. Tian Buwait's smile was like a spring breeze. He casually threw Muyu, and Muyu was thrown back into the shadow of the Bodhi tree. The sun continued to set slowly. He couldn't move. Xiao Shui came out and saw Muyu covered in blood. It was completely frightened. It didn't know what had happened to Muyu. It didn't enter Muyu's fear. Muyu couldn't even breathe, let alone speak. He only had pure consciousness. I'll kill Tian Buwait. Muyu heaved a sigh of relief. But his heart was filled with endless fear. Tian Buwait was much stronger than him in the real world. He was also stronger here. Whether it was in the real world or in the illusion array, he couldn't beat Tian Bu-Wait. Whenever he saw Tian Bu-Wait, he would think of Deadwood Daddy. He didn't know how to deal with his fear. Tian Bu-Wait had destroyed all the meridians in his body. Now, there wasn't a single part of his body that was intact. If it wasn't for the rules of the 8 trigrams, he might have died. No one would be able to save him. The death aura of Mu Ling's sword began to engulf Mu Yu's body. Black and white spiritual power surged out of his body. The black spiritual power almost swallowed up his entire body. But every time a part of his body was swallowed up, the white spiritual power would follow like a shadow, allowing the tissue to quickly grow back. The process of swallowing was very painful. The process of growing was also very difficult. He was constantly surrounded by pain. His entire consciousness was on the verge of collapse. But he had no choice. He could only grit his teeth. If he didn't recover before the sun set, then he really would die here. You still can't do this. Mu Yu's consciousness came to a forest. Gomang lazily said among the falling leaves. The 9th Heaven's Demon sealing array was sealed in his body. His body was in a mess, but the 9th Heaven's Demon sealing array was still intact. Where is the 9th Heaven's Demon sealing array in my body? Mu Yu looked at his body. His meridians should have been broken, and he shouldn't be able to stand or speak. But at this moment, he was intact. Gomang seemed to be tirelessly moving the leaves that trapped him. He casually said, "The 9th Heaven's Demon sealing array exists in every part of your body, including your consciousness. Even if you die and only your skeleton is left, the 9th Heaven's Demon sealing array will not disappear. Can you help me?" Mu Yu looked at Gomang. He couldn't feel any hostility from Gomang. Ever since the dead tree died and he saw Gomang here, Gomang seemed to have changed into a different person. He became very gentle. "I can't help you. You have to face all of this yourself." By the way, when facing fear, what you have to do is face it head-on and not blindly avoid it, Gomang said leisurely. Mu Yu was silent. He always wanted to face the existence of heaven is not waiting, but heaven is not waiting's detestable smile always made him burn with anger. He couldn't watch heaven is not waiting torture withered tree in all sorts of ways. "How should I face my fear?" Mu Yu asked after a long time. "That depends on how you view your fear. The scene you are afraid of is sometimes wishful thinking, isn't it?" Gomang raised his head as if he was observing something. Then, he said, "The sun is about to set. Your shelter is about to disappear. The 8 trigrams heaven is not waiting will kill you, but you have to remember that the heaven is not waiting in front of you is only the person you know. You think he is strong, so he is very strong. I have heard of the array gates 8 trigrams before. It is a test of one's heart. If you can't withstand it, you will die." The fallen leaves once again surrounded Mu Yu, sending his consciousness back to his body that was full of pain. "A test of one's heart?" Mu Yu murmured. Mu Yu's body was recovering at an astonishing speed. In just a few hours, his meridians and bones had been replaced. He felt that his body seemed to have become stronger. The sun slowly set in the west, and the light gradually dissipated. The true night finally completely enveloped Mu Yu. He knew that he no longer had a place to protect himself. The next thing he would face was true death. The heavens would not wait for him. In this hexagram, death was the true meaning of death. He had not overcome his fear in the world of netherworld grass before, but Deadwood Daddy had pulled him out. He had been running away from the fear in his heart. He did not dare to face Deadwood Daddy's death. He wanted to avenge Deadwood Daddy, but his enemy was so strong that he felt powerless. However, Ju Mang's words also told him that if he really wanted revenge, he had to put an end to the fear in his heart. He knew that he could not continue to be afraid. Chapter 372. Withered Tree was still hung in the air by Heaven Bu-Wait. Heaven Bu-Wait was still smiling as he watched Mu Yu slowly walk over. He wasn't even surprised that Mu Yu could recover so quickly. Are you here to die? Heaven Bu Wait said gently. But Mu Yu looked at Withered Tree's dying appearance and tried his best to suppress the anger in his heart. You can't escape all of this. You are afraid of me, so you will never be able to defeat me. You can only watch as I torture the people you care about. Your fear is what makes me strong. A whip appeared in Heaven Bu Wait's hand. He raised it high and whipped Withered Tree. Blood immediately soaked Withered Tree's clothes. Save me! Withered Tree's eyes were half open. He was extremely weak. Mu Yu clenched his fist. I know. You are still afraid of Withered Tree kneeling in front of me like a servant, right? Heaven Bu Wait raised his hand and Withered Tree fell heavily to the ground. He took the slave pill. You are afraid of seeing Withered Tree being controlled by me. You are truly a coward. Come, my servant. You know what to do. Heaven Bu Wait kicked Withered Tree. Withered Tree's aura was in chaos, but the slave pill made it impossible for him to resist Heaven Bu Wait's orders. He slowly got up and knelt at Heaven Bu Wait's feet. Not only are you afraid of this, you are also afraid that your master's undying body will be taken away by the threefold palace. A figure appeared beside Heaven Bu Wait. This figure was emitting a holy light. His face couldn't be seen clearly, but there was a familiar person lying on the ground. Feng Haochen's eyes were wide open. He was lying to the side, completely lifeless. The undying body is finally in our hand. The threefold palace's guardian sneered. White light bloomed from his body, and then all the white light poured onto Feng Haochen's body. Feng Haochen's body also began to emit white light. Then, Feng Haochen slowly began to move. He stood up and his entire body was covered in white light. The threefold palace's guardian had already possessed Feng Haochen's undying body. Mu Yu's anger was burning. He couldn't escape from this. He had to face it head-on. But what did it mean to face one's fears? Feng Haochen had always taught him that he had to live up to his own conscience when doing things. As long as he had a clear conscience, then what he did was right. A trace of clarity appeared in Mu Yu's eyes, and he slowly calmed down. A clear conscience? Mu Yu nodded thoughtfully. You're more afraid of your own death, aren't you? Although I'm your fantasy, if I kill you in your fantasy, you'll die in reality as well. You're afraid that after you die, you won't be able to personally kill me in the real world, and you won't be able to avenge Deadwood. You're right to be afraid because you know that you're no match for me, whether it's reality or fantasy. A cold sword appeared in Tian Bue's hand, and he pointed it at Mu Yu. Then, I'll end your fear as soon as possible, and you'll be free. Sword chi crisscrossed, and a terrifying pressure came crashing down on Mu Yu. Endless killing intent wrapped around Mu Yu's body. If this sword pierced through, Mu Yu would die. Fantasy, fear. Face your own heart. Mu Yu repeated these words. Looking at the overwhelming killing intent, he suddenly realized something. Mu Yu's lips curled into a smile. Tian Bue's sword was already slashing down on Mu Yu. The terrifying sword chi passed through Mu Yu's body, but it didn't cause any damage to Mu Yu. Tian Bue's unparalleled sword chi split open a huge crack under Mu Yu's feet, but Mu Yu was unharmed. You! Tian Bue's smile finally froze. I don't deny the fear you speak of. I know you have the ability to kill me, because this is my fear. Mu Yu slowly raised his head, and a strange aura surged from his body. Tian Bue was shocked to find that he couldn't move. I'm afraid that Deadwood Daddy will ask me for help, but I can't do anything. This is a fear I can't shake off because I feel guilty. Deadwood Daddy's death can't be separated from me. Mu Yu resolutely raised his feet and walked toward Tian Bue. But I've figured out one thing. Deadwood never asks anyone for help. Even in death, he never begs for mercy. Mu Yu continued walking. Deadwood had already stood up. He looked at Mu Yu from afar, and just like the image left in the blood jade ink crystal, he revealed a gratified smile. This smile made Mu Yu want to cry. Deadwood rarely smiled at him. Only when he did something to make Muyu suffer would he smile. That stubborn old man was often infuriated by Muyu. Occasionally, when Muyu was infuriated, he would laugh and vent his anger. This kind of smile was so precious to Muyu. He wanted to throw himself into his father's arms and cry like a helpless child. He wanted to pour out his inner grievances, but he held back. Now, Deadwood's father would never smile at him again. He could only work hard to make his father smile again. Deadwood Daddy's soul was still sleeping in the blood jade ink crystal. Muyu would definitely make him come back to life. This was because Muyu had said that he wanted Deadwood's father to truly live for him. I'm afraid of all of this. I know it's all fake, but it's useless to ignore it. I can't ignore my fear for this hexagram. I have to face my fear. Muyu walked in front of Tianbue. Tianbue's smile had already disappeared. You are my fear. Your power comes from my heart. In my heart, I know I can't beat you, so I don't have the courage to fight you now. The more I'm afraid of all of this, the stronger you are. Muyu snatched the sword from Tianbue's hand. But I understand now. The one who should be afraid is not me, but you. Because you will definitely die by my hands. Tianbue fell to his knees at Muyu's feet. A trace of unconcealable fear appeared on his face. No matter how strong you are, I shouldn't be afraid of you. Because you don't deserve to make me feel fear. Muyu's sword slowly slid across Tianbue's throat. Tianbue's eyes widened. When I'm no longer afraid, your power will disappear. How can you hurt me? Muyu's hand tightened, and Tianbue's head was cut off. A look of unwillingness appeared on Tianbue's face. His head was separated from his body, and he had no ability to resist. He had been arrogant before, but now he was like a dirty slug lying on the ground. You are stronger than me in the real world, but how can I let you affect me all the time? If you can defeat me even in an illusion, how can I avenge Deadwood Daddy? Muyu coldly stepped on Tianbue's smiling face, and then kicked his head away. He turned to look at the guardian of the Triple Palace. My master's body is not something you can covet. The white light on Feng Haochen's body began to flicker unsteadily. Then, something seemed to tear the white light apart, and forcibly pulled it out of Feng Haochen's body. You started a war to rule the Triple Palace. You are so selfish. No matter how strong you are, you will be destroyed by me. Muyu clearly slashed his sword. The white light that filled the sky was instantly shattered by the sword chi, and was swallowed by endless darkness. Many people would encounter the thing they were most afraid of when they entered the 8th hexagram. Everyone knew that it was an illusion, and wanted to ignore it, go through the wooden door, and leave. But running away from fear was not the way to solve the 8 trigrams. They could only return to their shelter. However, the shelter would gradually decrease, and fear would gradually erode the shelter. When the person who entered the hexagram realized that the illusion could kill them, even the most strong-willed person would panic. Because they could not defeat the thing they were afraid of in the real world, they would naturally think that they could not defeat it in the illusion. The illusion was no different from reality to the person who entered the hexagram, and their fear became a real threat. So the more afraid they were, the stronger the fear in the illusion, to the point where it could threaten their lives. Ignoring fear would not work. They had to face it. When one was no longer afraid of fear, then fear would no longer be able to hurt oneself. But until now, who could truly face fear? Fear was called fear because it was a pit in everyone's heart that could not be crossed. It was an insurmountable gap in everyone's heart. If they could not face fear and blindly ignored it, then they would eventually be eaten away by their own fear. The powerful part of the 8th hexagram was that there was no difference between the illusion and reality. Things that could make you retreat in the real world could still make you feel invincible in the illusion. Things that could kill you in the real world could still destroy you in the illusion. Many people would panic when they realized that their lives were threatened, and the fear would become even more rampant. Muyu was like everyone else. He was dominated by fear. He knew that he could not defeat Heaven Waiting, and he also knew that Heaven Waiting could kill him in the illusion. But he understood the origin of fear. The way to defeat fear was to look at it in the right way. You had to control fear, and not let fear control you. Mu Yu looked at Kumu and Feng Haochen. His heart was clear, as if nothing in the world could stop him. "You've remembered my words well. Not bad," Feng Haochen said as he stroked his white beard. Mu Yu nodded. This was his imagination. He thought that his master would definitely say this after knowing how he defeated fear. "You're really useless. You were almost done for." Kumu cursed. "Dad, can't you praise me with good boy, not bad?" Mu Yu asked. "No." Kumu snorted. Mu Yu smiled. He knew that the dead tree wouldn't praise him. The conversation between him and the dead tree was something he had imagined. Kumu had always been a stubborn person. Praising Mu Yu would make him feel that he had lost his dignity. Mu Yu wanted to protect Kumu's ridiculous self-esteem, so he did not intend to deliberately change anything. Feng Haochen and Kumu turned into specks of light and disappeared in the darkness. Then, the sun began to rise from the east, dispelling the darkness. The Bodhi tree reappeared in front of him. He saw the door in the distance. He knew that he would pass this hexagram by passing through this door. He pushed open the wooden door and found himself back in the room. There were 2 doors in the room. One had death written on it and the other had life written on it. The death door was already closed, while the life door had just opened. What Mu Yu did not know was that when he passed the 8th hexagram, the entire array door once again emitted a heart-palpitating wave. This wave did not disturb anyone. Instead, it directly passed to the middle-aged man in the array faction's forbidden area. The middle-aged man opened his eyes again. His eyes were filled with extreme shock. Someone finally passed the 8th hexagram? The middle-aged man's starry eyes landed on Mu Yu. His heart was surging. After waiting for so long, that person finally came? He passed the 8th hexagram, which was the most difficult, as the 4th hexagram. The remaining hexagrams can't stop him at all. The middle-aged man nodded slightly. As long as you pass the remaining hexagrams, then the entire array faction's doors will be open for you. Passing the 8 hexagrams meant that he was the most talented disciple of the array faction. The array faction would not hesitate to teach him all the array techniques. Zhan Bing and Fan Wen, the 2 disciples on duty, also revealed shocked expressions. They never thought that Mu Yu would actually pass the most difficult 8th hexagram. Especially Fan Wen. He thought about how he had looked down on Mu Yu. Who would have thought that he was such a talented person? He immediately broke out in a cold sweat. Mu Yu looked at the life door. He knew that he had passed the 4th hexagram and was now considered a disciple of the Zhongtian sect. Entering the life door was the 5th hexagram. However, he did not move. After struggling for a while, he finally gave up. Just now, Mu Yu already knew that the 4th hexagram had been replaced by the 8th hexagram. He had passed the 8th hexagram, so the remaining hexagrams were not enough to affect him. However, he did not want to be too ostentatious. He only wanted to learn some basic array technique. Then, he would focus on studying the profound Xian arrays that Deadwood Daddy had left behind. He also wanted to find out more about the array Heavenly Tao. He hoped that he would not be harmed by the Triple Palace's array guardian. Most importantly, this gossip made use of the fear in his heart. It allowed him to see Deadwood being tortured. He felt very uncomfortable. He did not want to be influenced by the gossip. He felt guilty towards his own Deadwood Daddy. He did not want his father to be used as a test to pass. He could have passed the remaining hexagrams and become the center of attention of the array faction. However, he chose to give up. For Deadwood Daddy and for himself. He hoped that in his heart, Deadwood's father would always be that stubborn old man who scolded him but was full of concern. Although Deadwood's way of expressing his fatherly love was very rude, Mu Yu was already used to it. He didn't want anything to tarnish Deadwood's image. I don't want to continue. How do I end this formation door? Mu Yu asked in a clear voice. What? Zhan Bing and Fan Wen were both shocked. They were still in shock, because Mu Yu had become the second person in the Array faction to pass the most difficult 8th hexagram. But Mu Yu's next words nearly made their eyes pop out of their sockets. Chapter 373. He actually gave up on the formation? The middle-aged man frowned. His expression was uncertain. He couldn't understand why Mu Yu gave up on the formation. Mu Yu had already passed the 4th hexagram and had even passed the 8th hexagram. If there were no accidents, he would definitely pass the remaining hexagram and become the second person after Array Heavenly Tao to pass the 8 trigrams in the past 100 years. If he could completely pass the 8 trigrams, it would definitely cause an uproar in the Array sect. However, once a genius disciple appeared in a sect in the cultivation world, the other sects would immediately know. This would also make it impossible for Mu Yu to keep his identity. He was now the disciple of a true god, and had an unclear relationship with the Pill Cauldron sect. To be on the safe side, the Array faction would definitely investigate this person's background. No sect would accept a disciple who already had a master. On the contrary, if he was just a culmination disciple and hid his cultivation, then no one would investigate his background. The possibility of him joining the Array sect would naturally be higher. The facts proved that Mu Yu's worries were correct. The Array sect's inspection of Xiantian disciples was particularly strict because only Xiantian disciples could truly understand the core of the Array sect. Xiantian disciples must have a clean background and couldn't be people of unknown origin. This was to prevent spies from other sects from infiltrating. The Pill Cauldron sect was not the only sect like the Array sect that treasured their own things. However, at that time, Kumu's identity in the Pill Cauldron sect was not ordinary. When he accepted Mu Yu as his disciple, others only thought that Kumu had already confirmed Mu Yu's identity, so they didn't suspect anything. Mu Yu stood in the 8 trigrams formation. He didn't know that there were 3 pairs of eyes watching him at this moment. Fan Wen, who was guarding the formation, rolled his eyes. He thought about how he looked down on Mu Yu. Now, even if Mu Yu gave up on the hexagram, he was still a culmination disciple and had a higher status than him. If the Array sect's sect leader knew that he had passed the 8th hexagram, he would definitely be valued by the sect leader. He gritted his teeth and said to Zhan Bing, "Junior brother Zhan, can you do me a favor? I accidentally offended him just now. Although he has only passed 4 trigrams now, he is actually someone who has passed 8 trigrams. If the elders in the sect know about this, they will definitely pay attention to him. By then, I will die even more miserably. Can you help me hide the fact that he chose to die and then be reborn?" "You want me to lie to the elder?" Zhan Bing was shocked. Lying to the elder was a big crime. In any case, only the 2 of us know that he has passed the 8th hexagram. The sect master will not know. He will only think that he is a Zhongtian disciple who has passed the 4th hexagram and will not pay too much attention to him. If you help me, I'll give you the Millennium Meteorite array base that I obtained back then. The core of a formation was the formation base, and the quality of the formation base determined the power of the formation. Fan Wen had obtained a 1,000-year-old meteorite array base by chance. He had originally planned to use it to set up a perfect array in the future advancement test. But now, in order to prevent Mu Yu from taking revenge on him in the future, he could only reluctantly part with it. As Hotian disciples, they had the opportunity to become Zhongtian disciples. Every year, an advancement test would be held, and the Hotian disciples who participated in the test would set up a formation array. If they could obtain the approval of the elders, they could become Zhongtian disciples, and their status would also rise. Zhan Bing was very tempted. The 1,000-year-old meteorite array base could at least double the power of the formation array he set up. He gritted his teeth and said, "Fine, I won't tell anyone about him passing the 8th hexagram. I'll just treat him as an ordinary Zhongtian disciple." Zhan Bing and Fan Wen had already stepped into the formation array, and both of them put away their inner thoughts. Passing the formation array was just giving up, they had no right to interfere. Congratulations, junior apprentice brother, on becoming a new disciple of our array faction. May I know junior apprentice brother's name? Zhan Bing said with a smile, his tone quite polite. The status of the disciples of the array faction was different. Hotian disciples were the lowest existences, while Zhongtian disciples were more powerful than Hotian disciples. Therefore, Zhan Bing did not dare to offend Mu Yu, because in the future, Mu Yu's status would definitely be higher than his. Senior apprentice brother, you're too polite. My name is Feng Mu. Mu Yu nodded slightly. He originally wanted to call himself Lan Feng, but he had already used this name before, so he did not want to use it again. Since junior apprentice brother Feng Mu has passed the 4th hexagram, why not continue? Fan Wen could not help but ask. He no longer had the arrogance from before, and at this moment, he had completely changed into a flattering expression. Mu Yu shook his head and said, "I don't know why, but when I passed the 4th hexagram I was exhausted. I no longer had any energy to pass the remaining hexagram, so I had no choice but to give up." His words did not arouse Zhan Bing's and Fan Wen's suspicions, because both of them knew that when Mu Yu passed the 4th hexagram, he was actually passing the 8th hexagram, which was the most difficult. If Mu Yu had exhausted all his energy, then it was reasonable. However, Fan Wen and Zhan Bing had already reached an agreement not to let others know that Mu Yu had passed the 8th hexagram, so they acted as if nothing had happened. Therefore, although Mu Yu had chosen to pass the hexagram in the face of death, his 4th hexagram was still the 4th hexagram. Even if the 4th hexagram was actually swapped with the 8th hexagram, it was still concealed by those with ulterior motive. Junior apprentice brother, you are now a Zhongtian disciple of our array faction. Let me take you to report. Fan Wen said enthusiastically. In fact, his understanding of array formations had almost reached the level of a Zhongtian disciple. As long as he passed the test, then he would also be a Zhongtian disciple. At that time, he would not have to worry about Mu Yu taking revenge on him. Mu Yu did not continue to challenge the array formation, but the people of the array faction did not appear to say anything. He pondered for a long time, and then closed his eyes again. Zhongtian disciples and Xiantian disciples were different. Zhongtian disciples lived in a room with 2 people, while Xiantian disciples lived in a room with 5 or 6 people. The treatment was completely different. Mu Yu was arranged into a room. According to Fan Wen's introduction, this person's name was Qing Zhuo. Qing Zhuo was a dark-skinned youth, a few years older than Mu Yu. He had already been a disciple for 5 years, and his cultivation was at the nascent soul stage. "Feng Mu, how many hexagrams have you passed?" Qing Zhuo was a very talkative person. As soon as Mu Yu arrived, he couldn't wait to ask. 4. Mu Yu replied casually. There were only 2 beds in this room, and all the living facilities were complete. Qing Zhuo smiled and said, "I have also passed 4. Even Zhongtian disciples are divided into high and low rank. Those who have passed 5 hexagrams are much stronger than those who have passed 4. You have just arrived, so there are some rules that you must know. Do not offend Luo Feilong and Ji Wenkai. They are the 2 overlords of the Zhongtian disciples, and are also sworn enemies. The 2 of them secretly compete with each other. Their cultivation and array Dao are similar, so they will definitely come looking for you." Looking for me for what? Mu Yu felt very strange. Forming a faction, of course. The competition between Zhongtian disciples is very fierce. Luo Feilong and Ji Wenkai are both fighting openly and secretly in order to become Xiantian disciples. Once a new disciple joins, they will try to win him over. Cheng Zhuo said. Forming a clique? Mu Yu smiled and shook his head slightly. He didn't take these things to heart. Cheng Zhuo looked at Mu Yu's indifferent appearance and kindly reminded him, "You'd better choose a side. Although neither of them are good people, if you don't choose a side, you will be ostracized everywhere in the future." Then which side did you join? Mu Yu asked. Luo Feilong, his protection fee is relatively low. Cheng Zhuo smiled embarrassedly. Protection fee? Mu Yu blinked. Why did he feel like a hooligan? And, after you pay the protection fee, if something happens, they will protect you. It will also be easy to get resources for learning Array Dao. Luo Feilong requires 5 spirit stones every month, and Ji Wenkai requires 6. Ji Wenkai's cultivation is at nascent soul 9th layer, and Luo Feilong is at nascent soul 8th layer, but Luo Feilong's achievements in Array Dao are higher than Ji Wenkai. Cheng Zhuo said. Mu Yu shrugged indifferently, asking him, a 5th layer out of body stage, to call a nascent soul stage big brother, how could those two be worthy of it? However, Mu Yu's current spiritual power fluctuations were only at the foundation establishment stage. There were some things that shouldn't be publicized. Cheng Zhuo told Mu Yu a lot about the rules of the Array faction and the usual cultivation time. In the morning, there would be a special elder to teach, and in the afternoon, it was free time, usually used to cultivate or practice Array Dao. When Cheng Zhuo talked about where Zhongtian disciples usually ate, Xiao Shuai's figure had already disappeared and went to the cafeteria. I heard that the Array faction's heavenly Array Dao ancestor is very powerful. Can you tell me more about him? Mu Yu pondered for a while and asked. This was what he wanted to know the most. After all, he came here to find out about the heavenly Array Dao. Hearing this, Cheng Zhuo's face was filled with respect. The heavenly Array Dao ancestor is the pillar of our Array faction. You've more or less heard of this. He usually doesn't appear in the Array faction and is always in the Forbidden Grounds. Only disciples who have made great contributions to the Array faction or Xiantian stage disciples can enter the Forbidden Grounds. Entering the Forbidden Grounds is seen as the greatest glory of the Array faction. This is the dream of us disciples. Great contributions or Xiantian stage disciples. Mu Yu wasn't a Xiantian stage disciple, so if he wanted to enter the Forbidden Grounds to see the heavenly Array Dao, he would have to make a great contribution to the Array faction. This seemed a bit difficult. What is a great contribution? Mu Yu asked. For example, finding some ancient treasures to hand over to the Array faction to save the Array faction from the abyss of suffering. This is all nonsense. How would our Array faction be in danger of being destroyed? Of course, there's also a chance. Defeating a talisman sect disciple in a talisman competition is a great contribution to the Array faction. Cheng Zhuo's face was filled with disgust when he talked about the talisman sect. Talisman sect? Mu Yu had heard of the talisman sect before, but he didn't know much about it. He didn't understand why Cheng Zhuo hated the talisman sect so much. The talisman sect and the Array faction are actually enemies. Our Array faction was originally called the Array Talisman sect. You should know that the most famous sects in the cultivation world are the 8 sects, right? Actually, a long time ago, there were 9 sects under the direct control of the 3rd palace on the 3 continents. The Array Talisman sect was the 9th sect. Chapter 374. Cheng Zhuo continued. The Formation Talisman sect was co-founded by Patriarch Zhen Xan and Patriarch Fu Xan. However, the 2 patriarchs had disagreements and looked down on each other. As a result, the Formation Talisman sect split into the Formation sect and the Talisman sect. Their power was divided. Both the Formation sect and the Talisman sect could no longer be compared to the other 8 sections. Therefore, there are only 8 sects left in the cultivation world. There are no longer 9 sections. After the Formation Talisman sect split into the Formation sect and the Talisman sect, both sects believed that their own Formation Tao and Talisman Tao were unique and neither of them was willing to submit to the other. Therefore, every year, the Formation sect and the Talisman sect would hold a Formation Talisman competition and mock each other to prove that their Tao was better. The Formation sect has not recruited any Khanate disciples for 10 years. Needless to say, the Talisman sect is getting stronger and stronger while our Formation sect's overall strength has been declining. We have not won a single Formation Talisman competition in the past few years. This made the sect master feel very aggrieved. Therefore, he set a rule that as long as any disciple of the Formation sect wins the Talisman sect in the annual Formation Talisman competition, it would be equivalent to making a great contribution to the Formation sect. They would be allowed to enter the forbidden area of the Formation sect and receive guidance from the Patriarch of the Heavenly Formation sect. Cheng Zhuo felt very helpless about the decline of the Formation sect. The Formation Talisman sect was originally a family. However, due to their different cultivation philosophies, they went their separate ways and followed their own understandings. When the disciples of the two sects met, it was as if they were enemies. This was especially so in the past few years when the Talisman sect began to rise. The Formation sect had been suppressed by the Talisman sect. The disciples of the two sects had reached the point where they would fight to the death. In the cultivation world's understanding of formations, only Formation masters and not Talisman masters were mentioned. In the beginning, the Formation sect was also much stronger than the Talisman sect. However, for some reason, the Formation sect seemed to be going downhill in the past few years. The Talisman sect was faintly showing signs of surpassing the Formation sect. This made the Formation sect feel an unprecedented crisis. The disciples of the Talisman sect have gone too far. After defeating us in the Formation Talisman competition every year, they would mock us without restraint. Now we can't raise our heads when we meet the disciples of the Talisman sect. We would fight whenever we have a disagreement, but we would always lose. Cheng Zhuo said angrily. How many disciples do we have now? Even a Xiantian disciple is unable to defeat a Talisman Grandmaster? Mu Yu knew that the Xiantian disciples were the elites of the Array faction. They were also the ones who would take up the responsibility of the Array faction in the future. If even the Xiantian disciples were defeated, then the Array faction would be in an awkward position. Actually, the titles of Xiantian, Middle Heaven, and Hotian disciples only apply to those of us who haven't finished learning about formations. Those who pass the test are called Xiantian, Middle Heaven, and Hotian Array Masters. Our Array faction has a large number of Hotian disciples, followed by Culmination disciples, and only one Xiantian disciple. The rest have all become Array Masters, so we can't gather enough Xiantian disciples to participate in the Array formation competition every year. Cheng Zhuo explained. Just one? Mu Yu felt a little incredulous. Were Xiantian disciples so rare? After the disciples of the Array faction finished their basic Array formation course, they had two choices. For example, Hotian disciples could choose to participate in the Array Formation Master examination and become a Hotian Array Formation Master. They could start doing various things for the sect, including setting up and maintaining various array formations for various sects in the cultivation world. If they didn't choose to become an Array Formation Master, then they could choose to participate in the advancement test. Hotian disciples could pass the advancement test and become Middle Heaven disciples, continuing to learn intermediate array formation knowledge. Middle Heaven disciples could also choose to become Middle Heaven Array Masters or participate in the advancement test and become Xiantian disciples. As for Xiantian disciples, they could only choose to take the Xiantian Array Formation Master examination. The Array Formation Master examination was much simpler than the advancement test. Many Hotian and Middle Heaven disciples who felt that they had no hope of advancing, plus they were getting older, would choose to become an array formation master. They could work for the sect and obtain more cultivation resources. Some people were confident in their own talent and wanted to further their studies, so they would participate in the difficult advancement test. However, the number of people who succeeded was not many. Like Luo Failong and Ji Wenkai, the two Middle Heaven disciples that Qing Zhuo mentioned, they wholeheartedly wanted to become Xiantian disciples, so they didn't participate in the array formation master examination. Instead, they constantly tried to take the advancement test. Unfortunately, they had already failed for several years. The Talisman faction was the same as the array faction. Their disciples were divided into Xiantian, Middle Heaven, and Hotian disciples. In the array formation competition between the array faction and the Talisman faction, it was stipulated that the participants must be disciples, not array formation masters or talisman masters. The array formation competition consisted of Xiantian disciples, Middle Heaven disciples, and Hotian disciples. Each sect would send out 3 Xiantian disciples, 3 Middle Heaven disciples, and 3 Hotian disciples. They would use the Tao of arrays against the Tao of talismans and compete in various techniques. How many array formation masters does our sect have now? Mu Yu asked. Our sect doesn't lack Hotian and Middle Heaven array masters. We have more than 500 Hotian array masters, more than 1,000 Middle Heaven disciples, more than 100 Middle Heaven array masters, and more than 300 Middle Heaven disciples. However, we only have 19 Xiantian array masters. Including the only Xiantian disciple, we barely have 20. Only 20 Xiantian array masters? So few? Mu Yu was speechless. The array faction was really going downhill. If they didn't recruit any more Xiantian disciples, then in a few years they would really be suppressed by the Talisman faction forever. The sect leader of the array faction was also very anxious about the current situation. However, he couldn't casually change the difficulty of the advancement test and increase the number of Xiantian disciples. This was because the Middle Heaven disciples who didn't meet the requirements couldn't learn the Tao of arrays of Xiantian disciples. Even if he let the 2 most talented Middle Heaven disciples, Luo Failong and Ji Wenkai, become Xiantian disciples, they still wouldn't be able to keep up with the Xiantian disciples' lessons. Learning the Tao of arrays had a lot to do with talent. Do you plan to participate in the advancement test and become a Xiantian disciple? Mu Yu asked. Qing Zhuo shook his head. I know my talent. It's impossible for me to pass the advancement test. In a few years, I'll obediently participate in the Middle Heaven Array Master's examination and become a Middle Heaven Array Master. The status of an Array Master in the cultivation world couldn't be compared to that of an alchemist. However, no one dared to provoke an Array Master. Many sects' mountain protection arrays, transmission arrays and the like were designed and maintained by the Array faction and Talisman faction. The Array faction and Talisman faction relied on these to earn spirit stones. As for the difference between the Tao of arrays and the Tao of talisman, Qing Zhuo couldn't explain it, so Mu Yu could only temporarily suppress this doubt in his heart. He had just arrived at the Array faction, so there were many things he needed to explore on his own. The next day, Mu Yu woke up early and followed Qing Zhuo to the Array formation class. There were currently more than 300 Middle Heaven disciples, and they were separated according to the progress of each disciple's studies. Qing Zhuo was a warm-hearted person, and although he and Mu Yu studied in different places, he still brought Mu Yu to the Zhongtian disciples' novice class, and then left by himself. The Array faction was located in the middle of countless mountain ranges, and mountain ranges were the best places to lay out arrays. This was also the main reason why the Array faction chose this place. Mu Yu's novice class was not in a house, but in an open space. This open space didn't seem to have anything, and was only surrounded by white fog. But when Mu Yu stepped into the white fog, he was surprised to find himself in a spacious hall. The array faction was filled with all kinds of array formations, and most of them were used for camouflage. Perhaps even the lake in front of him could be a house. If one didn't walk into the array formation, they would never know what was in front of them. At this moment, there was no one in the hall, so Mu Yu began to look around. The walls of the hall were hung with all kinds of 8 trigrams diagrams, and each 8 trigrams diagram had different annotations, explaining what would happen if there were fewer horizontal lines or more vertical lines. There were also some types of array bases, including Xiantian array bases, Middle Heaven array bases, and Hotian array bases. Different array bases would have different effects on array formations. Mu Yu looked at these array formations, and didn't feel that it was strange. This dead tree had already told him about it, and he also understood it in his heart. It was just that he couldn't show it too obviously, and he couldn't let others see any clues. You are the newly recruited Middle Heaven disciple? After about a quarter of an hour, a man who looked to be in his 30s walked into the array formation. Mu Yu bowed slightly. Greetings, Array Master. The man stood with his hands behind his back, and his cultivation was at the nascent soul stage. He looked at Mu Yu and said, "How old are you?" 19. Mu Yu didn't hide it. 19? That's considered very old for a new disciple. Your cultivation is only at the foundation establishment stage, and you will need to work hard to catch up with the other Middle Heaven disciples. Let me introduce myself. My name is Song Qingyu, and I am a Middle Heaven Array Master. I am responsible for teaching new Middle Heaven disciples about Array Dao, so you can call me Song Zhongshi from now on. Song Qingyu said. In the Array faction, Array Masters had a higher status than the other disciples. Even if they were Hotian Array Masters, their status was the same as the Middle Heaven disciples. So when a disciple became an Array Master, the other disciples would take the initiative to give them the respect they deserve. Mu Yu nodded and said, "This disciple will remember." How much did you know about Array Dao before you entered the sect? Tell me in detail, so that I can arrange for you to learn in the future. Last month, Array Master Lu brought back a new Middle Heaven disciple from outside. His knowledge of Array Dao is too little, and he needs to learn from the beginning. You must also tell me about your own situation. Don't pretend to know when you don't know. Song Qingyu said seriously. Song Qingyu was specifically responsible for guiding the new Zhongtian disciples. In the past few years, there had been too few new Zhongtian disciples, so his job was relatively easy. He only needed to teach Mu Yu the basics, and then there would be other Array Masters to teach her. Mu Yu's current understanding of Array Dao was probably similar to Song Qingyu's, but in order to deceive others, he deliberately pretended to only know a little. After all, he couldn't show that he knew everything here, otherwise it would arouse suspicion. Song Qingyu spent the entire morning teaching Mu Yu the basics of gossip, and Mu Yu would always pretend to be enlightened from time to time, and then casually thank Song Qingyu, which made Song Qingyu very happy. This morning was wasted. Mu Yu shook his head, somewhat helpless. Song Qingyu had already left, and Mu Yu was a new disciple, so he didn't have anything to do in the afternoon like the others. Because he was only at the foundation establishment stage, he had to go to the Array faction in the afternoon to learn the cultivation techniques of the Array faction. This made Mu Yu feel a little ridiculous. He was an out-of-body stage cultivator, and he had to pretend to be a newbie to enter the sect. This was something he had no choice but to do. He had just left the main hall when he found that there were already 10 people standing outside, divided into 2 groups, provoking each other. "Luo Filong, I trust you've been well since we last met," a young man said with a fake smile. "Ji Wenkai, don't pretend anymore. The new Middle Heaven disciple last time was yours. This one should be mine." Another young man sneered. "That depends on his choice," Luo Filong said leisurely as he picked his nails. Then everyone's eyes fell on Mu Yu, who had just come out of the novice class. Chapter 375. When everyone saw Mu Yu's appearance and cultivation, they all had strange expressions on their faces. How could he only be at the foundation establishment stage at such an old age? At this moment, Mu Yu's disguised appearance was about 19 years old, which was about the same age as Mu Yu's real age. However, her cultivation was only at the foundation establishment stage. Compared to everyone present, she seemed a little clumsy. These 10 or so people were all Zhongtian disciples. Some of them were even younger than Mu Yu, but even the weakest of them was at the Jindan stage. Little brat, how old are you? Why is your cultivation only at the foundation establishment stage? Luo Feilong frowned and asked. Mu Yu glanced at these people and said casually, 19 years old, cultivation at the 5th heavenly layer of foundation establishment. What? 19 years old and only at the 5th heavenly layer of foundation establishment? Isn't this cultivation talent too bad? Can this kind of person even enter the sect? This kind of person will only drag us down if he follows us, right? The crowd suddenly burst into laughter. All of the Zhongtian disciples present had entered the Array faction at the age of 12. Even the oldest one had entered at the age of 16. Although their cultivation was very low when they first entered, after a few years of cultivation, their cultivation had increased by leaps and bounds. Even the weakest of them had reached the 9th heavenly layer of Golden Dan. In front of this group of geniuses, a 19-year-old foundation establishment stage cultivator was nothing. Your cultivation is even worse than a Hotian disciple. How did you become a Zhongtian disciple? Did you enter through the back door? Luo Feilong looked at Mu Yu with disdain. Mu Yu turned a deaf ear to the ridicule and shook his head. I didn't enter through the back door, I entered through the 4 trigrams of the 8 trigrams. Almost every disciple of the Array faction had passed through the 8 trigrams, but these Zhongtian disciples had only passed through the 5 trigrams at most, not much different from Mu Yu. However, they did not know that Mu Yu had entered the sect by using the method of facing death. The 4 trigrams he had passed through was the 8 trigrams that no one other than Array Tiandao had passed through. Unfortunately, no one knew about this because the 2 Ho Tian disciples who had been guarding the gate had deliberately concealed this matter. So, Mu Yu didn't feel like making a fuss about it. You're already 19 years old and you're still in the foundation establishment stage. You'll only drag down the reputation of us Zhongtian disciples. Luo Feilong swept his gaze over Mu Yu arrogantly, before turning to Ji Wenkai and saying, This trash is yours. My people are all the best of the Zhongtian disciples, I don't like trash following me around. Trash? Mu Yu was stunned. He was the disciple of the 3rd stage real god Lu. His cultivation had reached the out-of-body stage a long time ago. He was also a well-known figure on the Supreme Immortal Leaderboard. He had even created an uproar in the world of cultivation. Wherever he went, people would talk about him. However, he was actually called trash by a bunch of ignorant original infant stage fellows? This was really something new. Ji Wenkai retorted coldly, I'm not a garbage collection center. I don't collect garbage. I think this trash is a good match for you, so I won't fight with you over him. Ji Wenkai had only glanced at Mu Yu from the beginning to the end, and had already dismissed the idea of taking Mu Yu as a follower. He and Luo Feilong were both the best of the Zhongtian disciples, and were also the most likely to pass the advancement test and become a Xiantian disciple. The reason they formed cliques was to collect more cultivation resources from other disciples to prepare for their own advancement test. Usually, there was constant friction between them, both openly and covertly. However, if their follower was a trash, they wouldn't be able to squeeze any benefits out of him. Moreover, it would also give their sworn enemy a chance to mock them. No one wanted to let the other have the upper hand. Luo Feilong and Ji Wenkai glared at each other, sparks flying in their eyes. Then, they both sneered and left with their followers, too lazy to waste any more words with Muyu. We were actually looked down on? Muyu, can you bear it? Little Shuai lazily asked from Muyu's pocket. Muyu didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he watched all this. The actions of these two people in his eyes were like childish children fighting, completely looking down on him. Thinking about how he was now known by everyone in the cultivation world, he was actually looked down upon by two rookies from the Array faction. He was really speechless. But this is also good, at least they won't always come and bother me. Muyu was very happy to see this happen. Trash, it was fine. It was just children playing house. Did he have to correct their laughable thoughts? It was a pity that he couldn't let them know his true identity, otherwise they would definitely regret saying such words. A genius youth being looked down upon as trash, Muyu was probably the first person in the history of the Array faction to be looked down upon. In the afternoon, Muyu groped her way to the place where the disciples of the Array faction could practice the basic mental cultivation method. After all, the Array faction used to be a branch of the Array Talisman sect. Their training method was very mysterious and could speed up the comprehension of array formations. Although this method couldn't be compared to the falling dust method, it still had its merits, especially its ability to assist in setting up arrays, which was very important for array masters. Without a doubt, the other Zhongtian array master, who was guiding the new disciples, also complained a few times when he saw Muyu's age and cultivation level. He muttered, "The Array faction is really getting worse and worse every year. They're taking in all kinds of cats and dogs." Muyu rubbed his nose. He didn't know how to refute the words of this nascent soul stage array master. With great difficulty, it was finally night time. He laid on his bed and thought about when he should find a way to participate in this year's Array Talisman competition and obtain a victory to obtain the qualifications to enter the Array faction's forbidden area. Qingzhou hurriedly came back. He came to Muyu's bedside and asked with concern, "I heard about today's matter, you must be in a bad mood, right?" "Why wouldn't I be in a good mood?" Muyu asked, puzzled. Qingzhou said, "Everyone is saying that our Array faction recruited a useless Zhongtian disciple. His age is too old and his cultivation is too low. Even Luo Feilong and Ji Wenkai weren't willing to accept him as a follower. I only just found out that they were talking about you." Muyu sat up and shrugged indifferently. "It doesn't matter, I don't care." "It does matter," Qingzhou said solemnly. "If you don't join a faction, you will be ostracized by the other Zhongtian disciples. Even the spirit stones you receive every month will be deducted. Every Zhongtian disciple receives 100 spirit stones, 5 Hotian formation bases, and 2 Zhongtian formation bases every month. If you don't have any backing in the Array faction, your things will be snatched away by others." "Why are we all from the same sect? Why would we snatch things from each other?" Muyu frowned. Qingzhou made a shushing gesture, then ran to close the door and windows tightly, whispering, "You don't know how deep the water is. Luo Feilong and Ji Wenkai have almost monopolized the resources of the Zhongtian disciples. Originally, we Zhongtian disciples were given 6 Hotian formation bases every month, but each of them took one away. Formation bases are essential for us to learn spirit arrays and set up spirit arrays. With one less formation base, we have one less chance to practice. Everyone is suffering in their hearts, but there's nothing they can do. If you don't join any of them, I'm afraid you won't even get a single formation base." Muyu felt that this kind of petty theft was really annoying. It was no wonder that the Array faction had declined. Everyone was snatching cultivation resources from each other, resulting in them not having enough resources to practice and improve themselves. It would be strange if the overall strength of the Array faction could improve. Thinking about it, losing to the Talisman faction every year was inevitable. With Luo Feilong and Ji Wenkai, these two blood-sucking bats, there would never be a day for others to shine. This is too unreasonable. Don't those Xiantian array masters care about it? How many Zhongtian disciples will they waste? Luo Failong and Ji Wenkai's actions were something that even Mu Yu, an outsider, could not stand. This is an unspoken rule between the Zhongtian disciples. Furthermore, Luo Failong and Ji Wenkai are both the elites of the Zhongtian disciples, and are the most likely candidates to become Xiantian disciples. A Xiantian disciple is equivalent to dozens of Zhongtian disciples, and the array masters above all place a lot of importance on them, so they usually turn a blind eye to their actions. After all, the cultivation world is a world where the strong prey on the weak. They have strength, so they can plunder more resources. Cheng Zhuo shook his head. The cultivation world is indeed a world where the strong prey on the weak, but we can't use this sentence to skip over some dirty things. You must know that if a sect wants to develop, it doesn't rely on one or two people, but everyone working together. If one or two people are strong, it is true that the sect can grow stronger, but sacrificing everyone for the sake of one or two people is the most foolish thing to do. The more talented disciples are oppressing the less talented disciples. The good ones are getting better and better while the bad ones are getting worse and worse. The polarization is very serious. This is not the way for a sect to develop, Mu Yu said seriously. He was not a politician, nor was he a strategist. He was just a person who did not want to be bound by the rules of the world. However, he also understood some basic survival principles. A sect should be owned by everyone, not just a few people. The main force of the Array faction was actually the Zhongtian disciples, but these Zhongtian disciples spent every day trying to curry favor with Luo Failong and Ji Wenkai, while their own talents were being suppressed by the two blood-sucking bats. It was a very sad phenomenon. For thousands of years, the Array faction had produced many blood-sucking bats like Luo Failong and Ji Wenkai. It was because of this unspoken rule that the Array faction's influence was declining. If Luo Failong and Ji Wenkai could really become Xiantian disciples, then it would be fine. However, after so many years, they still could not pass the advancement test. Their existence was a stumbling block to the Array faction's development. I understand the logic, but unfortunately, I can't do anything. Without strength, everything is just empty talk. Cheng Zhuo sighed. Mu Yu did not say anything. He did not want to get involved in this mess. His goal this time was only to learn some basic formation techniques so that he could understand the contents of the Xian formations. Perhaps he could see the Array Heavenly Tao and ask him to remove the 9 heavens sealing devil formation in his body. The development of the Array faction had nothing to do with him. As long as these two did not provoke him, he would not say anything. Don't worry, if you need anything in the future, just tell me. I still have a certain amount of authority among the Zhongtian disciples. I will protect you in the future, no need for protection fees. Cheng Zhuo was very loyal. Little Shuai was originally eating a steamed bun that he had stolen from the canteen. When he heard this, he laughed so hard that he spat out the meat in his mouth. He laughed and said, "Big brother, you also need to have the strength to do that. Eat your steamed bun, don't talk." Mu Yu stuffed another steamed bun into Little Shuai's mouth. Cheng Zhuo looked at Little Shuai with interest and said, "Spirit beasts that can talk are not common. What is so great about this little beast of yours?" Chapter 376. Did you see that? I heard that this guy is a trash who just entered the sect. He's really a disgrace to us Zhongtian disciples. He's only at the foundation establishment stage at 19 years old. Even Hotian disciples aren't as bad as him. I heard that he begged senior brother Luo Failong and senior brother Ji Wenkai to protect him. Unfortunately, they didn't care. What a joke. This is the first Zhongtian disciple who didn't succeed in choosing a faction. Mu Yu had just walked over when a few people's words entered his ears. They didn't even try to hide their words. They were deliberately saying it for Mu Yu to hear. Mu Yu frowned. Begging? Wasn't this news a little too crooked? It even became a story of begging and begging? Even though Mu Yu had a good temper, he was still angered by these words. What did they mean by begging? They wanted him, an out-of-body stage cultivator, to beg two nascent soul stage rookies? He shook his head. He was too lazy to lower himself to the same level as these people. Their gossip didn't hurt him at all. He would endure it for now. If there was a chance in the future, he would deal with them all. But there were always some people who didn't know the difference between life and death. You're the Zhongtian disciple who was called trash? A fat young man blocked in front of Mu Yu. Mu Yu raised his head. This guy was a head taller than Mu Yu, and his body was very sturdy. Just his body alone was twice as wide as Mu Yu's. To be able to grow so tall and fat, Mu Yu had always felt that it was a miracle because in his impression, fat people were all short. What's the matter? Mu Yu asked in a lukewarm voice. It's not a big deal. Today is the day to collect the spirit stones and array foundations. Since you're already trash, why don't you give them to me and I'll take care of them for you? This tall and fat guy was called Zhu Kaijun. He was one of the most famous Zhongtian disciples. He was one of Luo Feilong's most capable followers, a loyal lackey. Mu Yu had already been in the array faction for a few days. Just now, he had indeed received 100 spirit stones, 5 Hotian array foundations, and 2 Zhongtian array foundations from a Zhongtian array master. Base formations could be divided into innate base formations, central base formations, and acquired base formations according to the degree of abundance of spiritual qi. Generally speaking, the most common array bases were spirit stones. The slightly more precious ones were the demon spirits produced after the death of demonic beasts. Demon spirits similar to rank 3 demonic beasts were the most common ones in the Hotian array base. Rank 4 and rank 5 demonic beasts were the Zhongtian array base. When Mu Yu was in the Moyun mountain range, Elder Sun had once used a purple gold spirit stone to set up a spirit gathering array for Mu Yu. The purple gold spirit stone was a high-grade material among the innate array foundations. The blood jade ink crystal that Deadwood Daddy had left for Mu Yu was a rare Xiantian array base. The spirit qi contained within it had reached an astonishing level. The blood jade ink crystal had already been well protected by Mu Yu to prevent any accidents from happening. When Deadwood Daddy had first dispersed his cultivation, he had already given everything to Mu Yu, including many precious array bases. However, he hadn't paid much attention to arrays in the past, so these array bases had been left unused for a long time. Now it was time to unseal them. As for the array bases and spirit stones that the array faction had given to Mu Yu, they weren't even worth his attention. The array bases that he had casually taken out were all high-grade goods. They weren't as shabby as the ones he had received. If it was any other time, he wouldn't have a problem giving these things to anyone. However, this guy had come to cause trouble with a robber's face. This was something that Mu Yu didn't want to tolerate. Why do you want to rob other people's things? Mu Yu revealed an innocent and confused face. Zhu Kaijun froze for a moment, then burst out laughing. Obviously, this was the first time someone had asked him such an idiotic question. He arrogantly said, "Do robbers need a reason? People who rob are either ugly in their hearts and want to reap without sowing, or they are simple-minded and self-righteous, or they don't have a good upbringing. Which one are you?" Mu Yu asked leisurely. "I am." Zhu Kaijun was ridiculed by Mu Yu's brainless mockery. He couldn't wrap his head around it and even stop to think about why he wanted to rob. He really didn't know how someone with such low IQ could become a Zhongtian disciple. Arrays were so profound. When did becoming an array master not look at IQ? When Zhu Kaijun came to his senses and realized that Mu Yu was cursing him in a roundabout way, he immediately shouted angrily, "I am your mother." Without any explanation, Zhu Kaijun raised his fan-sized palm and slapped towards Mu Yu. He was a first heavenly layer nascent soul stage cultivator. In his anger, he didn't show any mercy at all. The air resounded with a sharp explosion. In the eyes of outsiders, Mu Yu was just a foundation establishment stage rookie. They feared that Zhu Caijuan's palm could turn Mu Yu into meat paste. Zhu Kaijun, don't kill him. You have to take responsibility. How can this trash withstand your palm? Be gentler. Many people hurriedly reminded Zhu Kaijun. Although this brainless guy was stupid like a pig, he still had cultivation. If he killed Mu Yu, then the crime of killing a fellow disciple would be confirmed. No matter how much the Array faction declined, it was still strictly forbidden to kill fellow disciples. Zhu Kaijun was reminded by others, so the strength of his palm was reduced by 70 to 80%. However, in his opinion, even if his palm was not strong, it was still not something a foundation establishment stage rookie could withstand. At the very least, it would break his bones and make him lie in bed for 10 days to half a year. If he knew Mu Yu's true cultivation, even if he had 100 guts, he would not dare to be so arrogant. Mu Yu seemed to be panic-stricken as he raised his hands. In a flash, he suddenly grabbed Zhu Caijuan's hand. Zhu Kaijun was shocked to find that his hand could no longer move down. How could this be? He was a nascent soul stage cultivator. Zhu Kaijun looked at Mu Yu. A pure black light flashed in Mu Yu's right eye. It reflected in Zhu Caijuan's eyes, making his heart almost stop for half a beat. Then, he felt a terrifying spiritual power coming from his hand. This spiritual power instantly wandered through his body. His mind went blank and his vision turned black. Boom! Zhu Caijuan's small mountain-like body suddenly fell down. He hit the ground and caused a tremor, making everyone's jaws drop. But Mu Yu flew out in a panic and also fell to the ground. He looked at Zhu Kaijun in horror, completely looking like a victim. What's going on? The 2 or 3 people next to him were stunned. How could the nascent soul stage Zhu Kaijun be the first to fall down compared to the foundation establishment stage trash? Mu Yu climbed up and asked in a panic, "Does he have high blood pressure or high blood fat? I saw that he was afraid to kill me, so he suddenly stopped. It seems like he didn't have time to breathe." The others had already run over and carefully checked Zhu Caijuan's situation. They found that Zhu Caijuan's spiritual power was indeed not flowing smoothly. It was very similar to what Mu Yu said about not having time to breathe. They were a little relieved. They thought that Mu Yu was a guy who hid his strength. It turned out that Zhu Kaijun was careless and caused trouble for himself. You don't rob me." Mu Yu saw that everyone was looking at him. He quickly retreated a few steps and then turned around to escape. He was afraid that someone would rob him again. "Not bad, Mu Yu. It turns out that you have a talent for acting." Xiao Shui laughed until his stomach hurt. "That's right, I'm going to win the Best Actor award." Mu Yu saw that no one was chasing after him, and then he couldn't help but laugh. "What is the Best Actor award?" Xiao Shui asked puzzledly. "I don't know. When I was in the village head grandpa would invite people to act in a play to celebrate the harvest every year. There were always a few people who acted particularly well. The village head said that the person who acted the best would get the glory of the Best Actor award." Mu Yu smiled. He also didn't know much about this matter. He leisurely turned into a mountain path and flew towards another valley. To be honest, the Array faction was really a vast sect. There were countless towering mountains and precipitous ridges. From the outside, it looked like an ordinary mountain range. But in fact, each mountain hid a mystery and was set up with all kinds of formations. If there were some places without permission, even if the disciples of the Array faction stepped in, they would only see simple flowers and trees and piles of gravel. But if they had permission to enter, they would be amazed to find that the mountains were filled with pavilions and strange beasts. Although the Array faction had declined, that was only in comparison to the talisman faction. In fact, with the array factions easy to defend and difficult to attack terrain and magical formations, if other sects wanted to attack the array faction, without the guidance of the array faction's Sciention array masters, even if they broke in, they would not be able to find where the people of the array faction were hiding. This was also the reason why even if the array faction did not accept any outstanding disciples, they would not be wiped out of the 3 continents. When Mu Yu first came to the array faction, he did not get lost and wandered around blindly. He relied on a detailed map. Actually, every disciple of the array faction had this map. On it was marked what kind of formations were set up on each mountain, which mountains were open to Hotian disciples, which mountains were open to Zhongtian disciples, and which mountains were open to Xiantian disciples. There were also some canyons and ravines. Some of them were open, but most of them were guarded. If one wanted to enter, they had to obtain permission. Every disciple would be given a token when they entered the array faction. This was the identification of their identity, and also the basis for entering and exiting the formations. The formations would recognize this token and determine if you had the qualifications to enter. Mu Yu's token had the word Zhongtian written on it. He already knew where the forbidden area of the array faction was. Unfortunately, his token was not enough for him to enter the forbidden area. Yesterday, Mu Yu pretended to get lost and wandered around the forbidden area. However, no matter how hard he tried, he could not break in. The forbidden area was surrounded by an extremely tight formation. Even the trees were isolated, so he could only return empty-handed. What made him laugh was that after being in the array faction for a few days, he had not seen a Xiantian array master of the array faction, let alone the sect leader Zhuge Shaosheng. Zhuge Shaosheng was said to be the most legendary Xiantian array master of the array faction besides the array heavenly Dao. The formations he set up were superb, and could be said to be the work of the gods. Many of the great sects' defensive formations in the cultivation world were set up by him. Because of this, none of the sects dared to offend the array faction. Think about it, most of the array formations in their mountain gates came from the hands of the array faction's Xiantian array masters. If they angered the array faction, the array masters of the array faction might tell the key points of breaking the array formation to a sect's archenemy. Of course, the array faction would not do something that would harm the interests of others. They set up formations for others and received payment from others. If they turned around and revealed the flaws in the formations, then wouldn't they be smashing their own reputation? Who would dare to ask them to set up formations in the future? Therefore, every disciple would remember this when they entered the sect. This was the bottom line that all array masters had to abide by. Mu Yu crossed over a mountain. Looking at the map, he saw a valley called the Advancement Hall. This valley was only accessible to Zhongtian disciples. At this moment, there were many Zhongtian disciples entering the Advancement Hall. The Advancement Hall was a test for advancement. If Zhongtian disciples wanted to become Xiantian disciples, they had to complete the test here. Why were there so many Zhongtian disciples entering the Advancement Hall? Mu Yu also wanted to find out, so he headed down the valley. Chapter 377. It was currently afternoon, the free time for all the Zhongtian disciples. Mu Yu had just entered the Advancement Hall when he saw a tremendous change in the valley. It was as if he had arrived in a vast and boundless starry sky. Whether it was the ground or the sky, it was a spectacular sight. Unlike when he had attempted the third trigram, he did not feel any restrictions here. It was purely an illusion array. At this moment, he was not the only one in the Advancement Hall. There were at least 50 or 60 people gathered here, and it was unknown what they were doing. When Mu Yu entered, no one noticed him. He stood in an inconspicuous corner behind the crowd, listening to the discussions of these Zhongtian disciples. Luo Failong and Ji Wenkai are preparing to try again, a Zhongtian disciple said. The two of them are the most likely to become Xiantian disciples. In half a year, we will compete with the Symbol Grandmaster. Our array faction cannot lose again, otherwise it will be 10 consecutive years of losing to the array faction. I hope the two of them can successfully become Xiantian disciples. Our array faction has not been able to gather 3 Xiantian disciples for several years now. Many disciples were discussing spiritedly as their eyes were focused on the two figures in the distance. Luo Failong and Ji Wenkai stood there valiantly, looking at each other, neither willing to give in to the other. The two of them were secretly competing, both wanting to be the first to become a Xiantian disciple, but neither of them had succeeded. After about a quarter of an hour, the figure of an old man with fluttering hair appeared in the starry sky. This old man was dressed in a navy blue Taoist robe. On his chest there were 2 yin-yang fish, one black and one white, chasing after each other. That was the unique mark of a Xiantian array master. What was surprising was that the 2 yin-yang fish on his Taoist robe were actually moving. Clearly, they were formed by a special array. This old man's white beard was meticulously groomed, and his entire person stood there with a breathtaking aura, causing all the disciples to involuntarily feel deep respect for him. All the disciples bowed and said, "Disciple greets Master Lu." Master Lu was an honorific title for a Xiantian array master. Normally, when a Hotian disciple passed the assessment and became a Hotian array master, they would be called Master Lu. But when a Zhongtian disciple became a Zhongtian array master, they would be called Master Lu. There were only 19 people in the array faction who could be called Master. Master Lu was a genuine Xiantian array master. His original name was Lu Dei, and his identity was especially noble in the array faction. Every Xiantian array master of the array faction had a profound understanding of the Tao of array, and their cultivation base was unfathomable. Array Master Lu swept his gaze over all the Zhongtian disciples before his gaze finally landed on Luo Failong and Ji Wenkai, nodding approvingly as he said, "Looks like the two of you have deepened your understanding of the array Tao. Not bad. Not bad." Luo Failong hurriedly said respectfully, "I am indebted to Master Lu's praise. In order to be able to contribute to the sect, this disciple will do his best to improve himself. I absolutely do not dare to slack off." Ji Wenkai also hurriedly said, "Many thanks to Master Lu. After receiving Master Lu's guidance last time, this disciple had a rather deep epiphany. This disciple will definitely defeat the Talisman Grandmaster in this year's Array Talisman competition and win glory for our Array faction." These two young men were usually quite arrogant amongst the Zhongtian disciples, but in front of Master Lu, they were extremely respectful. Their faces had completely changed, filled with a fawning expression, completely different from the way they had spoken to Mu Yu a few days ago, as if they were two humble and courteous young men. In truth, the talent of these two was indeed not bad, and there was a need to cultivate them. Master Lu naturally appreciated these two very much, so he turned a blind eye to their daily affairs. As long as these two could become Xiantian disciples, no matter how they bullied others, it would be a small matter. Since the two of you want to try again, I will summon the array tablet. I hope the two of you will work hard." Master Lu waved his hand, and 3 simple array tablets flew out from his sleeves, quickly growing in size before landing firmly in the starry sky. What the test of the array tablets was, Mu Yu did not know, but he knew that if someone passed the test, the array tablets would shatter. Once all 3 array tablets shattered, it meant that a Zhongtian disciple had successfully passed the advancement test and become a Xiantian disciple. These 3 array tablets were each as big as a door, and the tablets seemed to be broken, their edges extremely irregular, looking very strange. Mysterious array patterns were engraved on the tablets, and from time to time, a white light would flow along the array patterns. The 3 array tablets landed in the starry sky, like 3 mountains pressing down on everyone's hearts, heavy and solid. If one's mind was not stable, staring at these 3 array tablets for too long, they would feel a suffocating feeling in their chest, and even lose consciousness for several days and nights. You know the rules. As long as you can pass the test of these 3 array tablets, you can become a Xiantian disciple. The 2 of you can start now, Master Lu said and stepped aside, looking at Luo Failong and Ji Wenkai. Does senior brother Luo want to try first? Ji Wenkai cupped his hands towards Luo Failong, saying politely. Luo Failong snorted. How could he not know that Ji Wenkai was provoking him? But how could the competitive Luo Failong show weakness at this time, so he put on a fake smile and said, "Then it would be impolite for me to refuse." Luo Failong stood in front of one of the array tablets, closed his eyes, and adjusted his breathing. All the Zhongtian disciples stared at him. All of them had high hopes for Luo Failong, hoping that he could pass the array tablets test, and gain some experience from him. In fact, this was not the first time Luo Failong had come to challenge the array tablet. So far, he had challenged 23 times, and all of them ended in failure. After failing so many times, he had made a detailed summary of the array tablets test, and had already grasped the key points of passing the array tablets test. He believed that as long as he tried a few more times, he would definitely be able to break the array tablet. After a long time, Luo Failong opened his eyes. He was in a very good state, and stretched out his right hand, pressing it against the array tablet. The array tablet emitted a dazzling white light, and as the white light gradually surged, the inscriptions on the array tablet also began to move. Many mysterious inscriptions were faintly discernible, wrapping around Luo Failong. Luo Failong's forehead was covered in sweat, and his whole body was trembling slightly. He gritted his teeth and continued to persevere. No one knew what the array tablets test was, and no one could see what Luo Failong was encountering at this moment, but everyone was more nervous than him. After all, if one could break 3 array tablets, they would be able to become a 1-in-a-million Xiantian disciple. That was a supreme glory. Ji Wenkai watched from the side, and although he had a smile on his face, he was also very anxious. He did not want Luo Failong to succeed in breaking the first array tablet. If Luo Failong broke one of the array tablets, then the pressure on him would be great. If he wanted to be on the same level as Luo Failong, then he would have to break one of the array tablets. After about 2 hours, the light from the inscriptions grew stronger and stronger, and the aura from the array tablets grew more and more terrifying. Many people took a step back at the same time, and looked at Luo Failong in bewilderment. Luo Failong's face turned very pale. These inscriptions seemed to be exerting a great pressure on him. Then, he felt a lump in his throat, and spat out a mouthful of blood. His aura quickly withered. His hand had already left the array tablet, and he bent over, gasping for breath. A look of disappointment flashed across Master Lu's face. Although Luo Failong's failure was within his expectations, he still hoped that a miracle would happen. After all, for so many years, the array sect did not have a second Xiantian disciple besides Mu Chenghong. If this continued, the array sect would inevitably have a shortage of talent. Now there was only 1 Xiantian disciple and 19 Xiantian array masters. The array sect had been suppressed by the talisman sect, and if there were no more Xiantian disciples, the array sect's future would be bleak. The only Xiantian disciple was Mu Chenghong, and he was a genius who had passed 7 trigrams. Other than him, the only other Xiantian disciple could only be a Zhongtian disciple. But because of the difference in talent, it was simply too difficult for a Zhongtian disciple to successfully pass the test of the array tablet and become a Xiantian disciple. The other Zhongtian disciples also let out a few disappointed sighs, feeling sorry for Luo Failong. Luo Failong's followers had already run over to greet him. Ji Wenkai's face relaxed a little, but at the same time he snorted lightly. Luo Feilong's failure was the best thing for him. Ji Wenkai, do you want to try? Master Lu asked. He hoped that whether it was Luo Feilong or Ji Wenkai, as long as one of them could miraculously become a Xiantian disciple, then the Array sect would celebrate. Ji Wenkai respectfully said, Disciples' understanding of array formations has deepened recently, I am willing to try. His gaze swept past Luo Feilong, revealing a provocative look. Luo Feilong was anxious in his heart. He also did not want to see Ji Wenkai successfully shatter an array tablet. If that happened, his position in the eyes of the Zhongtian disciples would be lower than Ji Wenkai's. Ji Wenkai also stood in front of an array tablet, adjusting his state of mind, and then began to accept the test of the array tablet. The array tablet once again emitted a white light, enveloping Ji Wenkai's entire body. Ji Wenkai's face also instantly turned pale. He struggled to hold on, and under the surprised gazes of the crowd, his face began to redden, and the paleness also dissipated. Senior Brother Ji seems to have a chance. Senior Brother Ji, you can do it. The Zhongtian disciples who supported Ji Wenkai immediately began to cheer him on, at the same time making provocative gestures towards the Zhongtian disciples who supported Luo Feilong. Luo Feilong's supporters were also very angry, shouting, Don't be too proud, I think Ji Wenkai will also fail. That's right, even Senior Brother Luo did not succeed. What is Ji Wenkai? The supporters of both sides began to engage in a war of words, and there were even all sorts of unpleasant curses. It was not until Master Lu coughed lightly that everyone quieted down. Nonsense. What are you guys doing? If you disturb Ji Wenkai's state of mind and affect him, see if I don't teach you all a lesson. Master Lu scolded softly. Master Lu looked at Ji Wenkai with hope. Ji Wenkai's performance was clearly much better than Luo Feilong's, and there was even a possibility that he could succeed in breaking the array tablet. This was a huge improvement, and even Master Lu was looking forward to it. Damn it, you absolutely cannot succeed. Luo Feilong clenched his fists. The white light of the array tablet grew stronger and stronger, and Ji Wenkai's face began to turn red. However, everyone could feel that the array tablet was emitting a breathtaking aura. This was something that Luo Feilong had not achieved. Shwa! An intense white light suddenly burst forth, causing everyone to be unable to open their eyes. However, Ji Wenkai's supporters were ecstatic. Did this mean that Ji Wenkai had succeeded? Whether it was Luo Feilong's supporters or Ji Wenkai's supporters, they were all nervously looking at Ji Wenkai, who was surrounded by the white light. The thoughts of both sides were completely opposite. Even Master Lu's expression changed. He became somewhat excited. As long as Ji Wenkai was able to break one of the formation tablets, it would already be a huge step. This way, when he accepted the test of the next two formation tablets, he would be able to grasp the technique. Once he succeeded in the first step, the following steps would not be so strenuous. The white light of the array tablet slowly dissipated, revealing Ji Wenkai's figure. Chapter 378. The array tablet was still intact, but Ji Wenkai had already fallen to the ground, his aura weak and listless. Just like Luo Feilong, he had also failed. Failed? How is that possible? Everyone's faces were filled with shock. Just now, the array tablet had clearly shown that it was about to break. But why had it suddenly failed? Luo Feilong's expression was one of relief. As long as Ji Wenkai had failed, then everything was fine, at least he had not surpassed him. Master Lu first walked over to the array tablet and checked its condition. After finding that there were no signs of it collapsing, he walked over to Ji Wenkai's side and placed his hand on Ji Wenkai's back, sending a stream of pure spiritual energy into Ji Wenkai's body. Ji Wenkai slowly woke up and said in fear and trepidation, This disciple has disappointed Master, please forgive me. Master Lu said kindly. You were about to succeed just now, why did you suddenly fail? Ji Wenkai sighed. This disciple was about to pass the test of this array tablet, but I got stuck at the last step. There's no other way. It's fine. Have you found out where you are stuck? Master Lu asked. A confident look appeared on Ji Wenkai's face as he said, I have found out where I am stuck. As long as you give me a few more days, after I recover from my injuries, this disciple will definitely succeed in breaking this array tablet. Good. You should have such indomitable spirit. Master Lu revealed a gratified smile, saying, You should first recover from your injuries. If you need anything, just come to me and I will give you a few pointers. If you have any array formation needs, just tell me. As long as you can become a Xiantian disciple, the sect's resources will all be open to you. Ji Wenkai was overjoyed and quickly thanked Master Lu. Master Lu stood up and swept his gaze over the other Zhongtian disciples, saying, All of you must learn from Ji Wenkai. He was close to success today, and breaking the first array tablet is just around the corner. Everyone must work hard, and in the array formation competition half a year from now, you must properly teach the symbol faction a lesson. Yes, this disciple will remember. All the Zhongtian disciples bowed respectfully to Master Lu. Master Lu was in charge of teaching the culmination sect's disciples, and although he was usually an easygoing person, he was very strict with his disciples. His only hope was that one of these culmination sect's disciples would be able to bear the heavy responsibility of supporting the array faction in the future. Then who else wants to continue the test of the formation tablet today? Master Lu saw that everyone was in good spirits and nodded slightly before asking. Everyone looked at each other, but no one dared to make a sound. Luo Feilong had failed. Although Ji Wenkai was about to succeed, he had also failed. Since the two most promising Zhongtian disciples had failed, it was even less likely for them to succeed. Master Lu said, The time for the talisman competition is getting closer and closer. I will put these 3 tablets here. If any of you want to try, go ahead and try. Even if you fail, it doesn't matter. Just be like Ji Wenkai and constantly sum up the experience of failure. One day you will succeed. After saying these words, Master Lu gave Luo Feilong and Ji Wenkai an encouraging look before leaving the advancement hall. After he left, the advancement hall burst into an uproar, discussing how Ji Wenkai had almost succeeded. Ji Wenkai adjusted his body, then stood up and cupped his fists towards Luo Feilong, saying, Senior brother Luo, today I was just a little bit unlucky, otherwise I would have broken the first tablet. It seems that I will have to go find Master Lu tomorrow to exchange some insights. Senior brother Luo also needs to work hard. Luo Feilong's face was so livid that water could be wrung out of it. Today, Master Lu was obviously more optimistic about Ji Wenkai, which really made him feel angry. He forced out a smile. Then I must congratulate junior brother Ji. But let's not talk about how you haven't broken a single tablet yet. Even if you break the first tablet, there is still a second one, and a third one. I will see how you become a Xiantian disciple. The two's conversation was very tense, and their supporters also began to clamor with each other. It was not until Ji Wenkai and Luo Feilong left that everyone stopped arguing. Ji Wenkai and Luo Feilong left with their respective followers, leaving only Mu Yu in the advancement hall. Formation tablets? Mu Yu rubbed his chin, looking at the 3 ancient formation tablets. He had seen Ji Wenkai and Luo Feilong's performance just now. Ji Wenkai's chances of breaking the tablet were higher, and Luo Feilong obviously had not reached Ji Wenkai's level. Mu Yu, do you want to try? Long Ting asked. Will there be anything to eat if I break the tablet? Little Shuai said heartlessly. Let me see. Mu Yu walked in front of the tablet. Just now, Luo Feilong and Ji Wenkai had chosen different tablets, So he chose the third tablet that neither of them had touched. What is so difficult about this tablet? It can actually prevent a culmination disciple from becoming a Sciention disciple? Mu Yu looked at the inscriptions on the tablet. He was surprised to find that these inscriptions were familiar. Wait, I think I have seen these inscriptions somewhere before. Mu Yu's eyes lit up. He remembered where he had seen these inscriptions before. When he was in the second layer of heaven, the mountain where the white ape demon king was trapped had these inscriptions on the ground. Little Shuai also remembered. He wagged his tail and said, "Could it be that these inscriptions have something to do with the white ape demon king?" No, it shouldn't be related to the white ape demon king, but the almighty human who set up the array to trap the white ape demon king might be related to the array faction. Mu Yu also couldn't understand these inscriptions. He stretched out his finger, wanting to touch the inscriptions on the tablet. But just as his finger touched the tablet, it suddenly emitted a white light and sucked him in. Strictly speaking, his whole body was still standing in the same place, but his consciousness was sucked in by the tablet. What is this place? Mu Yu stood in the middle of a wilderness. Around him were not only short shrubs, but also several towering trees. There were also several terrifying auras hidden in the forest. Roar! A deafening roar suddenly sounded from behind Mu Yu. Then, he felt as if he had poked the nest of demonic beasts. Countless demonic beasts roared and rushed out, either flying, running, or jumping, surrounding Mu Yu. These demonic beasts were of different sizes, ranging from rank 1 to rank 5 demonic beasts. However, the only thing in common was that the demonic beasts surrounding Mu Yu were all white. No matter what the true color of these demonic beasts' fur was in the cultivation world, they were all white here. However, their strength didn't change at all. He saw rank 2 flame horse beast, rank 4 breeze wolf, rank 5 octopus. What? Don't octopuses live in water? Have the times changed? Mu Yu looked at the octopuses floating in the air, slowly wriggling their tentacles in astonishment. It was really strange. These demonic beasts stared at Mu Yu covetously, causing Mu Yu's hair to stand on end. Could it be that this array tablet wanted to test him on how to defeat these demonic beasts? But at this moment the demonic beasts suddenly retreated, and a figure walked out from behind the demonic beast. Mu Yu took a closer look. It was actually Tianran. "Who are you?" Mu Yu asked cautiously. After experiencing so many illusions, he obviously wouldn't think that the person in front of him was Tianran. This person was obviously fake. "I am the tablet spirit. Since you have entered the array tablet, you will need to undergo the array tablet's test." The tablet spirit that looked like Tianran said innocently. Whether it was the tone or the actions, it was no different from the Tianran that Mu Yu knew. "Then why did you appear in Tianran's appearance?" Mu Yu asked. "I don't have a form, so for convenience when communicating with others, I will appear in the appearance of the person you like the most. This way you won't feel abrupt," the tablet spirit said innocently. Mu Yu helplessly shook his head. It would be strange if it wasn't abrupt, but he didn't want to refute anything, so he asked, "What is my test?" In this section of the tablet spirit, you will be tested on your wisdom in setting up arrays. You can choose 100 of these demonic beasts, and then I will guide you to defeat the demonic beasts in another place. The tablet spirit blinked. She appeared in Tianran's appearance, which indeed made Mu Yu very happy. But Mu Yu had to constantly remind himself that the tablet spirit wasn't Tianran. "Can I see my opponents first?" Mu Yu sized up the demonic beasts around him. The strongest of these demonic beasts was about the same strength as him. "Yes, you can follow me." Tianran smiled faintly and led Mu Yu to fly over a big tree. Then, Mu Yu finally saw his opponent. What the F***ck was that dense and densely packed. There were countless black demonic beasts below, completely different from Mu Yu's white demonic beasts. What made Mu Yu speechless the most was that these demonic beasts were all rank 6 demonic beasts. If any of them stood out and roared, the rank 4 and rank 5 demonic beasts on his side would probably be scared to death. These are all rank 6 demonic beasts. After you choose, a rank 6 demonic beast will also stand out from the black demonic beast. What you need to do is to command your demonic beast to defeat that rank 6 demonic beast. By the way, your demonic beast will obey your command and be able to understand your words. This is the only thing the weaker side can rely on. The tablet spirit said, "The strongest demonic beast on my side is rank 5. How can I defeat those rank 6 demonic beasts? Even if they fight together, I'm afraid that any rank 6 demonic beast will be able to drown my demonic beast with spit." Mu Yu felt that this was too difficult. A rank 6 demonic beast was equivalent to a spirit-severing stage cultivator, and the demonic beast on his side had the same cultivation as him. Although he had a lot of demonic beasts, even if they took turns to fight a rank 6 demonic beast, they would not be able to defeat it. This is the problem you should think about. When you become a Xiantian disciple, you must learn how to use the current limited resources under the weakest conditions to achieve the goal of defeating the strong. The most important quality of a Xiantian disciple is not cultivation, but wisdom and the ability to set up a formation. In the hands of a Xiantian disciple, everything can be set up. A real master must learn to play to his strengths and avoid his weaknesses. As long as you set up the formation properly, even if your strength is weak, it will be more than enough to defeat the opponent. The tablet spirit said, "Defeating the strong with the weak, only then can you show the true strength of a master." The tablet spirit seemed to know that Mu Yu's cultivation was in the out-of-body stage, so she made Mu Yu's opponent to be a rank 6 demonic beast, which was equivalent to the spirit-severing stage, which was one level higher than Mu Yu's. The highest cultivation level of the demonic beast that Mu Yu could command was only in the out-of-body stage. This was completely like hitting a stone with an egg. The possibility of winning was too slim. The flow of time here is different from the outside. A quarter of an hour outside is equivalent to a day here, but this is not suitable for cultivation. It is just a fictional world, so don't rely on it to do anything. 2 days later, no matter if you choose your demonic beast or not, the other party will send a rank 6 demonic beast to attack you, so be careful. In here, your cultivation will not be suppressed. If you want to get out, there are only 2 ways. Either you defeat your opponent or you control all the demonic beasts to be annihilated. The tablet spirit looked at Mu Yu one last time and then disappeared. Mu Yu remembered that when he was in the Withered Tree Valley, because he was grounded by Deadwood Daddy, he used the dragon's power to make the demonic beasts in the valley obedient. He also set up 100 beasts formation. This 100 beasts formation had not been used for a long time, but he did not expect it to be used here. Mu Yu thought of Deadwood's father again. Back then, Deadwood had specially given Mu Yu some pointers on the 100 beasts array, allowing him to perfect it even more. Chapter 379. There was a reason why the disciples of the Array faction were divided into Xiantian, Mid-Heaven, and Hotian disciples, because each level of disciple possessed a different level of comprehensive ability. Hotian disciples only needed to understand the basics of array formations, and learn how to use sufficient resources to arrange array formations, as well as perform better than others under the same conditions. For example, when Mu Yu had attempted the third 8 trigrams, he had faced stars that could change their forms. Although they were both stars, he had to use the stars he controlled to defeat the stars controlled by the array formation. Not only did a mid-heaven disciple need to have the characteristics of a Hotian disciple, but they also needed to know how to adapt. For example, if array formation was changed, what would happen, and how to use the smallest changes to completely transform one array formation into another array formation. Many array formations were actually similar, but because of the different positions of the array bases and array eyes, they would produce different effects. Many Hoteon disciples knew how to arrange array formations, but they did not know how to change them, so they could not be compared to a mid-heaven disciple. A Sciention disciple naturally needed to have the characteristics of a Hoteon or mid-heaven disciple, but they also needed to know how to use the least amount of resources to maximize the effect of an array formation. In the eyes of a Sciention array master, everything in the world was interconnected, and as long as they used the right method, they could use anything as an array base or array eye. A top Sciention array master not only needed to be resourceful and creative, but also had to have a strong temperament. Very few people were able to pass the test of temperament. The Advancement Hall's array steel was specially designed for mid-heaven disciples, and many mid-heaven disciples were unable to pass the test of the array steel, because they lacked the creativity to create array formations. Facing so many demonic beasts, they would not know what to do, especially when their opponents were demonic beasts that were an entire level higher than them, and the strongest demonic beast they had was only equal to their own strength. Most mid-heaven disciples would directly choose the strongest demonic beast to fight, and did not know how to complement each other. Facing a demonic beast that was an entire level higher than them, they had no chance of winning. Mu Yu carefully examined the characteristics of the black demonic beast. These sixth-order demonic beasts represented the most complete variety of demonic beasts in all three continents. There were demonic beasts that flew in the sky, ran on the ground, swam in the water, thick-skinned, nimble, sharp teeth, hard claws, venom-spitting demonic beasts, ugly cries, everything. I can only choose a total of 100 demonic beasts, and the strength of these demonic beasts is not balanced. How should I choose? Mu Yu turned around and looked at his low-level demon beast. The old, the weak, the sick, the pregnant, and the young were all happily circling around him, as if they were going to the market. Mu Yu did not know whether to laugh or cry. When choosing a demonic beast, one had to consider many factors. Because the opponent was unknown, he did not know which sixth-rank demonic beast he would be facing. Therefore, he had to take into account all kinds of situations and not go to extremes. If he knew that his opponent would be the thick-skinned iron-armored rhinoceros or the venom-spitting scorpion-tailed spider, then he could choose the agile demonic beasts with hard claws that were not afraid of poison to fight. However, since he could not predict his opponent, he had to try his best to balance his demonic beasts. The powerful part of Mu Yu's 100 Beasts formation was that these beasts could learn from each other's strengths and make up for their weaknesses. They could bring out the strengths of each beast to the extreme. However, at that time, the formation did not consider one point, and that was that the pressure of a high-level demonic beast would affect the low-level demonic beast. At that time, because of the existence of the dragon vine, its overbearing dragon aura could intimidate all the demonic beasts, making them unable to use their own aura to interfere with each other. But now that the dragon vine was not here, he had to consider the issue of the demonic beast's aura. However, these were all things that needed to be considered later. He had to first classify the demonic beasts. What made Mu Yu feel a little comforted was that these demonic beasts could obey his command. Fortunately, this was the case. Otherwise, he would have to think of a way to tame the demonic beast. When would he be able to make his 100 beasts formation? Come, listen to my command. The strong ones stand here, the big ones stand over there, and the fast ones stand in the middle. The demonic beasts with high IQ quickly understood that they should stand in a line. The demonic beasts with low IQ would always stand in a line blindly. For example, there were 3 third-rank demonic beasts, cerebellum giant ants. These ants were as big as an elephant, but their heads were only the size of 2 of Mu Yu's fists. Their IQ was not high, and they stood in a daze, not knowing what type they were. Mu Yu sent them to the strength team. Although their heads were small, their strength was really amazing. This was the innate advantage of ant. There were also some demonic beasts that were hesitant, not knowing which side they should stand on. For example, there were 4 fifth-rank demonic beasts, blood spirit birds. They were both fast and lethal. One moment they stood in the speed team, and the next moment they swayed and flew to the attack team. After a long while, they felt that their speed was fast and ran back to the speed team, giving Muyu a headache. Okay, you guys stand in the speed team. Muyu sent the 4 blood spirit birds to the speed team, and then spent another 2 hours to classify the remaining demonic beasts. This process was actually very difficult, because even though he was experienced and knowledgeable, he still did not understand the characteristics of some demonic beasts. He thought that at this time it would be good if Qiao Shui was here. Qiao Shui had stayed in the demon race for a long time and could be said to be an expert in demonic beasts. She would definitely be able to give very pertinent advice. Hundreds of demonic beasts stood in the formation, then the next step was how to choose the formation of his 100 demonic beasts. Because the opponent was very strong, the aura of a 6th-rank demonic beast was able to intimidate low-rank demonic beasts, so it was necessary to gather the aura of all the low-rank demonic beasts together to resist the pressure of a 6th-rank demonic beast. This was the first problem to be solved. A suitable formation could disperse the opponent's aura. Muyu had already thought of a few excellent formations to solve the problem of aura intimidation. 9-grade porcupine boar, black shield tortoise, 5 thunder speed eagle. When Muyu was setting up the formation, he had to clearly understand the strengths and weaknesses of each demonic beast. He counted the demonic beasts, and a few formations of 100 demonic beasts quickly appeared in his mind. As long as the formation of 100 demonic beasts was suitable, it was almost not difficult for the weak to defeat the strong. Soon, Mu Yu's impassioned command rang out among the demonic beasts, echoing with the demonic beasts snoring. However, because the one commanding was a demonic beast and not a human, the difficulty factor increased a lot. Little brain giant ant, you guys stand in the center, yes. Just stand there and don't move. Stare at the butt of the black shield tortoise in front. Follow it wherever it turns. Sleepy wolf, if you close your eyes and fall asleep again, I will let the fire spirit fox burn your tail. Pangolin beast, move 4 steps to the left. 4 steps is not 10 steps. Is my Mandarin so bad? Little wasp, let me see your wings. Flap your wings slower, or I can't see it. Slower, slower, yes, just like that. Hey, why did you fall down? I didn't ask you not to flap your wings. Heaven Melody Sparrow, we don't need you now. Sing a song for everyone to liven up the atmosphere. Limitless Skunk, you are not allowed to fart anymore. You are smelling your teammates. Hold your fart for me, I will let you fart to your heart's content later. Mu Yu's mouth was dry from shouting. Fortunately, his 100 demonic beast formation had already taken shape. Because he didn't know which rank 6 demonic beast the opponent was facing, he had to adjust the formation to the most compatible state. It was equipped with both offense and defense. At the same time, he also prepared a few different formations to deal with any unexpected situation. Among the 100 demonic beasts, there were less than 10 rank 5 demonic beasts. Most of them were rank 4 and rank 3. If he commanded these demonic beasts to attack the rank 6 demonic beast in a disorderly manner, it was estimated that these low-rank demonic beasts would all be lying on the ground with a roar from the rank 6 demonic beast. Come, let's rehearse one more time. Everyone, remember your positions. Don't mess up. Little brain giant ant, how many times have I said it? Move while staring at the butt of the black shield tortoise, not the butt of the pangolin beast. The thick-skinned one is the black shield tortoise, and the one with a pointy body is the pangolin beast. How can you mix them up? Yes, that's it. You have to move quickly and follow your friends in front of you. Sleepy wolf, are you still sleeping when your butt is on fire? 9th age porcupine boar, when you move, don't erect your thorns. Look, you've pricked the face of the limitless skunk behind you into a cactus. Little wasp, you can flap your wings faster now. Just now, I only slowed you down because I wanted to see your body size clearly. Although the demonic beasts could understand Mu Yu's words and obey his commands, their cooperation with each other was still very unfamiliar. Mu Yu had to strictly tell them the distance to move. It couldn't be more or less. Otherwise, it would seriously disrupt the formation. Mu Yu spent another 20 or so hours to train his own formation. Then, he continuously improved it and changed the demonic beasts, increasing the margin for error. Because of the existence of the rank 3 demonic beast, Little Brain Giant Ant, it was quite difficult to make a good formation. Their intelligence was too low. Even if he told them 10 times, they still wouldn't remember. However, because they were the most suitable demonic beasts, Mu Yu could only think about how to make up for their mistakes. From being hesitant at the beginning to having all the demonic beasts listen to his commands, it only took a little more than a day. It was already quite rare to achieve this result. Fellow demon beasts, we need to sing a song from time to boost morale, liven up the atmosphere, and relax. Mu Yu used the rest of the time to form a choir according to the tones of different demonic beasts. This was what he was best at. When he was in the Withered Tree Valley, he had filled the entire deathly silent valley with sounds of singing. There was no need to mention how lively it was. To be honest, the tone of the ant really didn't match Mu Yu's song, but he didn't have the heart to dampen the ant's enthusiasm, so he could only helplessly wait for it to finish. Then, he waved the branch in his hand, knocked on the shield of the black tortoise, and said loudly, "Unity is strength, ready! Sing!" All the demonic beasts looked at the branch in Mu Yu's hand and began to sing loudly. They were actually humming a decent song. Their voices were the background music, and the lyrics were all sung by Mu Yu alone. This choir that Mu Yu had formed when he was bored was quite shocking. After the song ended, every demonic beast's blood was boiling. Even the sleepy wolf was full of energy. Tomorrow we will definitely defeat that rank 6 demonic beast. We will make that rank 6 demonic beast regret making us its enemy. We will let it know that although our strength can't compare to it, we can still defeat it. Mu Yu confidently glanced at his little companions, full of hope for tomorrow's battle. Chapter 380. 2 days passed in the blink of an eye, and the time to confront the rank 6 monster had finally arrived. Mu Yu's side was made up of trained shrimp soldiers and crab generals, while the opponent was a high rank 6 monster. If the monster was 1 rank higher, it wouldn't be a problem for one to fight against 1,000, not to mention Mu Yu's pitiful 100 monster beasts, which looked too weak to stand up to the wind. It could be said that the rank 6 monster beast had the absolute advantage in terms of strength and momentum. It all depended on whether Mu Yu could rely on the 100 beasts formation to get rid of the opponent or not. Roar! A terrifying aura came from afar. It was the aura of a rank 6 monster beast, which was equivalent to a human spirit severing stage cultivator. The majestic pressure made Mu Yu's heart palpitate incomparably. The few third-order monster beasts on his side even panicked and fell to the ground, trembling. They were just short of running away. The pressure from a high-order monster beast on a low-order monster beast was too much for these low-order monster beasts to bear. Mu Yu forced himself to calm down. As the eye of the 100 beasts formation, if he had a problem, then the other monster beasts would be even more vulnerable. Calm down. We don't need to be afraid of it. Remember, our target is... Do, the cerebellum giant ant at the front called out twice, indicating that this battle was not optimistic at all. These small monster beasts would lose without a doubt. Mu Yu patted his head and said, "In short, we will definitely defeat the opponent. Everyone, don't panic! As the aura got closer and closer, the pressure on Mu Yu and his 100-beast array also increased. Many monster beasts began to let out low cries. Obviously, they were scared out of their wits by the aura of this high-level monster beast. Mu Yu shouted, "100 beasts crane formation!" All the monster beasts began to move. They mixed with each other in an orderly manner, forming a huge 100 beasts crane formation. This formation looked like a white crane spreading its wings. On the left and right sides, 30 rank 4 armored bulls formed the crane wings. The blood spirit bird circled above the armored bulls, chirping briskly. In the middle of the crane wing formation, the black armored tortoise was the head, followed by the cerebellum giant ant, and the pangolin beast was protecting the cerebellum giant ant. The slumber wolf and the other demonic beasts formed a crane tail, waiting for an opportunity to strike. The 100 beasts crane wing formation formed a sharp aura. With the black shell tortoise as the leader, all the demonic beasts gathered their own aura on the black shell tortoise. Like a hot knife through butter, the 100 beasts crane wing formation tore apart the pressure created by the majestic rank 6 demonic beasts. The combined aura of these demonic beasts faintly surpassed that of the 6th-order demonic beast. Those weaker demonic beasts immediately stood up straight. As the eye of the formation, Mu Yu was also the commander of the 100 beasts crane wing formation. He was in the air above the giant ants, protected by the double-winged shadow condor and the 5 thunder-speed eagle. 20 or so little wasps were scattered all over the 100 beasts formation. They were responsible for monitoring the operation of every part of the formation and reporting problems back to Mu Yu in time so that he could make adjustments. Sha, sha, sha. In the forest ahead, the sound of a certain demonic beast's footsteps on the leaves could be heard. Although this sound was very weak, it was like a drum beating on the hearts of Mu Yu and all the other demonic beasts. That kind of aura still made everyone feel uncomfortable, but because all the demonic beasts had gathered their own aura, the trembling from their souls had disappeared. This was the best beginning. Then, a small black cat walked in front of the 100 beasts formation and sat down on its front legs. Its brown eyes were sizing up the 100 beasts crane wing formation with interest. "Our opponent is a rank 6 little cat?" Mu Yu was stunned for a moment. Not only him, all the other demonic beasts also felt that something was wrong. Such a small cat could actually scare them to this extent? This small black cat then stretched out its small claws and began to run around licking as if there was no one around. It even let out a satisfied meow from time to time. "Big brother, we are fighting. Can you be more serious?" Mu Yu didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he looked at this small black cat. The aura it was emitting definitely came from a rank 6 demonic beast, but its body was really too small. He felt that his 100 beasts formation could flatten it with just 2 steps. The small brain giant ant suddenly made 2 do-la sounds in panic. Mu Yu frowned as his gaze fell on the small black cat's head. Suddenly, his expression changed slightly. How was this a small black cat? It was a terrifying phantom, a netherworld cat. I can really see all kinds of demonic beasts here. Mu Yu cursed under his breath. He had already recognized the true appearance of this cute little cat. The phantom netherworld cat was a very difficult and powerful existence among the rank 6 demonic beasts. Its appearance was that of a house cat, but if you treated it as a house cat, you wouldn't even know how you died. There were 3 small eyes hidden around the phantom netherworld cat's eyes. Usually, these 3 small eyes were tightly shut. Once they opened, it was the time for them to show their true power. Every time the phantom netherworld cat opened an eye, its body would change once. Its power would also change according to the number of eyes it opened. When the 3 hidden eyes were completely opened, even the long-armed ape, the overlord of the rank 6 demonic beasts, would not be its match. Mu Yu had already put away his earlier contempt. He focused his attention and was on guard. Seeing that the small cat was still leisurely licking its claws, he decided to take the cat by surprise first. 5 Thunder's Speed Eagle, Lightning Treat, Winged Shadow Condor, Shadow Wings slash. Muyu gave out the order. The 5 Thunder's Speed Eagle and Winged Shadow Condor around him instantly turned into streaks of light. Lightning and shadow wings intertwined as they struck towards the phantom Netherworld cat. The Mirage Netherworld cat lazily raised its head. With a light slap of its little paw, all of the lightning shadow wings were scattered by its paw. The 5 Thunder's Speed Eagle and Winged Shadow Condor were considered very powerful existences among the rank 5 demonic beasts. But their combined attack was not even qualified to force the phantom Netherworld cat to move. Now, once the piercing spear is out, give me your chrysanthemum, Muyu shouted. Many sharp spikes suddenly emerged from the ground of the phantom Netherworld cat. These spikes came from the tails of the piercing beasts. The tails of the piercing beasts were rather strange. They could lengthen their tails and burrow into the ground, attacking their enemies from a long distance away. Meow. The Mirage Netherworld cat's eyes widened, and it jumped up reflexively. Although it wasn't injured at all after being stabbed by a spike, it wasn't a pleasant thing to be stabbed in the butt. Meow. The phantom Netherworld cat was angered by Muyu. It cried out twice and charged towards the 100-beast formation like a bolt of lightning. Its speed was so fast that it exceeded Muyu's imagination. Black Shell Shield. Muyu immediately shouted. The formation began to shrink, forming a circle around the phantom Netherworld cat. All of the demonic beasts began to gather their own demonic spirits onto the black armored tortoise. After that, the black armored tortoise's body shook, and an illusory image slowly rose from its shell. This illusory image rapidly grew, and enveloped all of the demonic beasts within it, forming a transparent black armored shield. At the same time, the phantom Netherworld cat's body appeared in front of the black shell tortoise. Its sharp claws shot out and scratched the black shell shield. Boom! The entire 100-beast formation shook violently. No one would have thought that the black shell shield would be forcefully pushed 3 feet away by the phantom Netherworld cat's claws. One had to know that Muyu's 100 beasts formation was nearly 200 square meters in size, and this Mirage Netherworld cat was only the size of Muyu's foot. However, it was able to send such a huge formation flying with a single swipe of its paw. As expected of a rank 6 demonic beast, the phantom Netherworld cat's terrifying strength was obvious. Cracks began to appear on the black shell shield. The most powerful part of the rank 5 black shell tortoise was its shield. Among the rank 5 demonic beasts, no demonic beast was able to break through its black shell shield. Not to mention, the black shell shield was formed from the power of all the demonic beasts. This was already an extraordinary display of strength. The toughness of the black shell shield was something that ordinary rank 6 demonic beasts might not be able to do anything to. Unfortunately, it was facing a rank 6 phantom Netherworld cat. It was a king amongst the rank 6 demonic beasts. The moment the black shell shield came into contact with the phantom Netherworld cat's claws, cracks began to appear. Purring! 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 The phantom Netherworld cat's claws only managed to create a small crack. It was not enough to break through the entire black shell shield. Its figure had already disappeared, and it continued to attack the black shell shield from different directions. All the demonic beasts could only see countless shadows of the phantom Netherworld cat in front of their eyes. After that, their bodies began to sway uncontrollably. Fortunately, Muyu's 100-beast formation was able to link all the demonic beasts' auras together. Otherwise, with the phantom Netherworld cat's strength, the entire formation would have been turned into a mess. This won't do. This is too passive. Muyu's mind raced. The phantom Netherworld cat had almost no weaknesses among the rank 6 demonic beasts. Whether it was its speed, strength, or defense, they were all extremely strong. With such a small figure, it was able to force Mu Yu's 100-beast formation to retreat step by step before it even opened its eyes. Not to mention, it still had 3 eyes that had yet to open. In terms of size, Mu Yu's 100-beast formation was a little cumbersome. In front of the Phantom Eye Netherworld Cat, it could only endure the claws of the Phantom Eye Netherworld Cat. Coupled with its extremely fast speed, it was impossible to hit its body. The Phantom Eye Netherworld Cat's senses were one of the best. It could easily sense the changes in the air and react in time. Slumber wolves, you've slept for so long. It's time to get up and move around. At this moment, the black shell shield was already filled with spiderweb-like cracks. If the Phantom Eye Netherworld Cat managed to break a hole in the shield and charged in, all the low-tier demonic beasts would basically be killed by it. If that was the case, this battle would be over. Over 10 slumber wolves opened their sleepy eyes and howled towards the sky. Streaks of yellow aura rose from their bodies and gradually covered the entire black shell shield. This yellow aura was like a second layer of the protective shield, emitting a strange smell. Selah. The black shell shield was finally broken, and the Phantom Eye Netherworld Cat's figure charged in. However, the yellow aura suddenly transformed into numerous ferocious wolf shadows that pounced towards the Phantom Eye Netherworld Cat. The Phantom Eye Netherworld Cat looked at these wolf shadows with disdain. With just a wave of its aura, it shattered all the wolf shadows. This was too easy. They couldn't even withstand a single blow. However, the Phantom Eye Netherworld Cat's figure gradually slowed down. A wave of tiredness swept over it, and it actually felt an irresistible drowsiness spread throughout its body. Yawning, it landed on the ground and began to close its eyes. Although the slumber wolves were only 4th-grade demonic beasts, they had an extremely powerful sleeping aura that could cause other demonic beasts to quickly fall asleep. Whether it was hunting or hiding, they relied on this unstoppable aura to cause their opponents to fall into a deep sleep. Then, they would be able to capture their prey or escape. Because the Phantom Eye Netherworld Cat's senses were extremely developed, this kind of aura had an even greater effect on it. In just a short moment, the Phantom Eye Netherworld Cat actually began to snore lightly. We must not let it open its third eye. Otherwise, it'll be even more difficult to deal with. Under Mu Yu's signal, all the demonic beasts quietened down, not wanting to disturb the Phantom Eye Netherworld Cat's sleep. This was a rather strange scene. It was originally a lively battle, but in an instant it became completely silent. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.